Here they are, Viscount Millis and his daughter Elena. The father brings his daughter up to speed. This banquet is her chance. Do you understand, Elena? He asks sternly, reminding her that her fiancé Hans will also be at the reception and she must behave impeccably. The girl obediently agrees, anxiety in her eyes. Yes, father, she whispers faintly. The Viscount points to a group of people. Those blondes over there are the Leighton family. At the center of attention is the Duke of Leighton and next to him, the former Duchess. Elena freezes, realizing who is in front of her. Ah, so this is a former Duchess, comes the clarification. Once a noble but from an impoverished family, she was sold to the Duke's house. Shortly after the wedding, the Duke died and the young widow became a widow, a stepmother who is younger than the current Duke. She is the subject of endless rumors, Wilhelmina Leighton, the Grand Duchess. It is an honor to meet your Grace, Duke Leighton, the Viscount pronounces. Elena tries to follow her father's example, but a sudden pain pierces her stomach. Al Leighton, the girl loses her balance. I'm honored to stand. Elena, growls her father, noticing her blunder. What do I do? Elena thinks in panic. I've starved myself for days for this banquet, and now my stomach. Straighten up and greet them properly. What in the world is going on? Father whispers through gritted teeth. My God, comes the voice of the former Duchess. Why is that child so thin? She asks. Look at those arms, skin and bones. And you're dressed so openly in this cold, marvels Wilhelmina, throwing her cloak over Elena's shoulders. You're thin enough as it is, so a corset and heels? Remarks the Duchess. Child, are you eating normally? Wilhelmina asks anxiously. You need to eat something, she insists. My goodness, not a speck of blood in your face, worries the Duchess. Ha! Elena can't hold back a weak chuckle. Grandmother, Wilhelmina says quietly, turning to the woman next to her. Just look how skinny our granddaughter is, laments the woman. Before I was married, I, Wilhelmina, was a noble woman from a family mired in debt. The only thing I could do was to get a job as soon as possible, and desperately earn money to survive. Why does this exhaustion seem so familiar? Wilhelmina thought. Wasn't I the eldest daughter in my past life too? And then one day, past life, suddenly I remembered my past existence. In my past life, I was Kim Hannah, a modern academy instructor who died at 32. After an early death, I was transported to a fantasy world, or was it reincarnation? And of all things, an instructor? If I use this knowledge well, perhaps I can live an easy life. Once I started making plans, my family suddenly went bankrupt. One of my father's relatives lost the entire family fortune in gambling. As expected, I was treated as confiscated property and sold. The concept of human rights is rather vague in this fantasy world. There isn't even a term for disinheritance. She's quite a decent woman. I'll take that woman, Wilhelmina heard. And so, I was bought as a bride for an old nobleman who had already buried 4 wives. So now my last name is Leighton. They say it's the greatest noble family in the West. But the fact that he had 4 previous wives must mean something. It's a hard life in the mother-in-law's house. Hey, get up at dawn and pick out my dress. Yes, mother. Domestic violence. How do you manage maids? It's probably something like that, right? Should I just run away? Wilhelmina thought. I can't, can I? Master passed away. It happened yesterday, a heart attack. Although the funeral isn't for a while yet, you should still prepare for the funeral. Dead? Wilhelmina was shocked. Not only did I get married for the first time in both lives, but I became a widow at the speed of light. Mom, I got married. For real. A widow from the greatest noble family in the West, before I even had a ceremony. A ducal house plunged into chaos before it had time to welcome its new lady. Please wait until everything is sorted out. Still in shock. Separate residence. I was sent to a separate residence without even being introduced to the territory or family. It's been 2 months since then. It would be nice if Madame had dinner in the main house with the Duke, the maid suggested. I am all right, Anna. That's good enough for me. I like living here with all of you. Madame, the maid was touched. Do you have any visits scheduled to the main house today? Anna asked. No, there was an induction ceremony last week, so His Grace must still be busy. There's still a 5-year banquet coming up. It's said that an esteemed guest from the imperial family will be attending it. Distinguished guest. Not that it has anything to do with me. Well, with the sudden demise of the former Duke, there must be an endless amount of work. I see. Thank you. Don't worry about me, Anna. It may seem like I'm showing concern for the servants, but I'm really content with this life. Compared to the days when I lived in poverty, this is a life of luxury. So much so that I don't mind staying like this forever. But still, once things are settled, I'll probably be kicked out, right? Who would want to keep a young widow they haven't even spoken to? I'm leaving now. Please call me if you need anything. Once I leave here, should I go back to the capital and start a business? Or travel? They'll at least give me something, right? Knock knock, knock knock. Anna? It's me, ma'am. Come in. Excuse me. Madame asked to see you. Ma'am? Duchess Layton, does she have business with me? It concerns your future orders. So this is finally the time. Right now? Yes. Madam has also asked you to watch your speech. My speech? She wants me to know my place and speak formally. Circumstances may be difficult, but you are still senior in rank. Madame is strict on matters of hierarchy. She expects you to address her as your sister-in-law. Ah, I see. Sankyuk. I'm younger than her own husband, and she is a stranger to me, and yet she insists that I address her as my mother. Impressive. This is the room. May we come in? An impeccable noblewoman, dignified and pure, a treasure of the West. Helene Fian Layton. To her, is pride less important than order? Welcome, mother. Welcome, Helene Layton pronounces, looking at Wilhelmina. Mother. The woman replies uncertainly. Strange, I didn't feel awkward around her. Wilhelmina remarks to herself. For the first time, I can only apologize for the delay in our contact, Helene says. So we have finally met, Helen. Please have a seat, she offers. Bring some tea, she orders the maid. Acting like a mother-in-law, as a mother-in-law should be in normal life, Wilhelmina thinks. But more importantly, Helene Fian Layton, a member of the imperial family and mistress of House Layton. When one speaks of an impeccable noblewoman, she is always mentioned first. A woman known as the pinnacle of high society. The model of the noble family's prestige is Helene. How have you been? Helene asks. And how about you, Helene? Wilhelmina politely inquires. As always, I've been busy, replies the Duchess. So you're saying you've been too busy to call me? Wilhelmina thinks with irony. I suppose I shouldn't take it too personally. First of all, I'd like to discuss the upcoming events, Helene begins. Ah, here it is. Wilhelmina mentally prepares herself. Going forward, we would like to welcome you as an official member of House Layton, the Duchess states. What? Wilhelmina is stunned. I was so shocked that I blurted it out without thinking. What's going on? I was sure they were going to throw me out. She puzzled. Once you become a true member of Layton House, we'd like you to attend the end-of-year and New Year's banquets with us, Helene continued. Even I, who have never been part of high society, know how important the end-of-year banquet is to the Duke's daughter. No matter how influential House Layton is, it will be difficult to avoid the rumors. Anna also mentioned that there will be a high-profile guest at the banquet. If even the Duchess uses such a term, it must be someone extremely important. Frankly, one is tempted to ask if they've lost their minds. Whether they like it or not, I'm a stain on the House of Layton. Think. Wilhelmina tries to make sense of it. They're not helping me out of pity, are they? It's not charity. The title of mother-in-law has considerable power in itself. They wouldn't bring someone of my position into the house for sentimental reasons. No, they wouldn't. It dawned on Wilhelmina. What if it wasn't entirely her decision? The Duchess is a strict stickler for hierarchy and order. No matter how much Helen puts rules above personal pride, am I really the one who should stand above her in terms of hierarchy? House Layton is one of only 2 ducal houses in the empire. The only person who can put pressure on them is His Majesty the Emperor? Wilhelmina guessed. Helen shudders faintly, sipping her tea. I see. Helene hesitates for a moment. It seems the Emperor has made his position clear. Come to think of it, the new Emperor ascended the throne last year, and I've heard that he favors the Eastern faction. Apparently they played a crucial role in his rise to power. Meanwhile, Layton is the head of the Western nobility. The late Emperor's first Empress gave birth to the first Prince and Helene before she passed away. The current Emperor is the child of the second Empress. He ascended to the throne by defeating the first Prince, who used to be the Crown Prince. To the Emperor, House Layton and Helene, his half-sister, should be political enemies. However, House Layton possesses great wealth and land and has considerable influence in high society. The newly crowned emperor would not dare to provoke them carelessly. Damaging their reputation or initiating political manipulation will be, unless the previous duke didn't die suddenly. That's right. The death of the former duke created a window of opportunity. Judging from Helene's reaction, the emperor must have had a hand in it. Now the picture is becoming clearer. The cruel former duke who married 4 wives and buried them all has suddenly passed away. Now House Layton, who bought a 5th wife, wants to get rid of her as soon as she is no longer needed. A serious moral lapse. For the emperor, who oversees the nobility registry, this is the perfect excuse to intervene. And let's be honest, no one but the emperor himself could have forced House Layton to accept a fallen noblewoman as its matriarch. In the end, House Layton chose to accept me rather than give the emperor an excuse to publicly make them look bad by banishing. By keeping the parasite around, they'd eliminate any excuse to interfere. Even if the emperor didn't put pressure on them, the duchy might have simply acted out of fear. Either way, it shows how sensitive House Layton is to the political climate of the empire. Now, instead of kicking me out, they should make sure I don't run away. How interesting, she says. It's Wilhelmina drinks her tea as well. So this is what they call a political struggle. Life in the annex is comfortable, Wilhelmina reports. I don't think there will be any problems in the future. Since Helene has asked, she continues, I will attend the banquet, but I'm missing a lot of things, so I hope you can help me. I don't have a dress or accessories, she enumerates. Even though I don't know anything about banquets, at least I realize I can't come to an event like this in my pajamas. So buy me something, Wilhelmina states bluntly. Got it? Helene replies, do you need anything else? I heard it's cold out west in the winter, Wilhelmina says. It would be nice to have some outerwear. I'll send a tailor right away, Helene promises. No, not for me a tailor, Wilhelmina clarifies. For the children working in our annex. About 30 sets, I suppose. One more, Wilhelmina curls her fingers. I just thought the maids' clothes looked a little thin. Obviously, whose idea it was to make the maids wear such tight clothes. Anna would come into my bedroom every morning and mutter about how warm it was in here. That should be enough, Wilhelmina concluded. Are you really sure? Helene asks. Yes, Wilhelmina nods. Helene looks stunned. Now that I've grasped the point, why don't I start acting on it? Did she really expect me to ask for money or jewelry? But Wilhelmina hesitated for a moment. Greed only leads to trouble. Even if things are reversed now, I'm still an ignorant outsider with no real standing in the duchy. If I act too recklessly, they might reduce me to a mere appendage. So, take it in moderation when the Duchess offers kindness, decides Wilhelmina. That is the phrase I should live by from this moment. Then I shall go, says Wilhelmina, standing up. I have a morning meeting. We're here. Wilhelmina looks out the window. It's time for the kids from the laundry to come in. There's even magic in this world, but they can't create something like a washing machine with warm water. Oh, and Wilhelmina pauses. I think Helene is a wonderful daughter-in-law, Wilhelmina pronounces. Here, Wilhelmina turns around. What do you mean by that? Helene asks, keeping her eyes on Wilhelmina. It's not empty words, it's a sincere compliment. Calling someone mother is not an easy thing to do. The strength of a hostess who wears a mask for the sake of her family. It's like I've realized it all over again, Wilhelmina says. Ah, Lady Wilhelmina. A man's voice rises. She is kinder than she appears, the voice remarks. She takes great care of the servants. She memorized all their names in 2 days. Sometimes she can be harsh in her words, but the truth is, she cares about me, the man continued. Is she really just a kind woman? Helene is puzzled. No, that can't be. Even if she wasn't trying to hide it, she understood Ethan's situation and the political climate from that short conversation. Her status may be low, but her ability to assess the situation is undeniable. Didn't she have political science as a major in the academy? Someone who understands politics can't be purely good, Helene concludes. It could all be an act, she decides. Should I send the butler? He was a close aide brought in from the imperial palace, and he remains immune to the changing currents of the empire. But he is also kind and fair, not the type that would be useful at times like this. Ah, I have a meeting with the children in 30 minutes, Helene recalled. I've spent too much time thinking about Wilhelmina. The meeting was scheduled for an hour, but I'll have to cut it short. I've wasted too much time. But why are they outside? Helene huffed. I need to remind the babysitter to be punctual. I want to see my mom soon. Would she be happy if I picked flowers for her? Children's voices break out. Helen stands up, fixing her dress and hair. Helene stops. She thinks Helene is a wonderful daughter-in-law. Wonderful daughter-in-law? When did she ever come to that conclusion? Those eyes. She's younger than me, but it's like she can see right through me. Unpleasant, Helene thinks and leaves the room. Do you understand, teacher? The question resounds, reminding me of the importance of the moment. Regression, possession, and reincarnation, asserts the voice. It's important to remember that, it adds. Aha, yes, Wilhelmina replies inarticulately, immersed in her thoughts. It's one of the most fundamental fundamentals of web novels. The voice continues. All three, regression, possession, and reincarnation, share the common concept of bringing back past memories and knowledge. Regression is a return to a specific point in the past. Possession means taking possession of someone else's body. Usually the person taking over the body has past knowledge of the original owner of the body. The fallen hero I know, exclaims the voice. And reincarnation is somewhat similar to regression, but involves being reborn as an entirely new person. Thanks to this friend who passionately lectured me about cliches for a full 30 minutes, it was quite helpful when I reincarnated as Wilhelmina. But it's not enough, Wilhelmina realized. I'd rather be a world history lecturer. If I were one, even in a fantasy world, I would have a better understanding of human rights, working conditions, and culture. child labor, 14-hour workdays, uncontrolled exploitation. Since this is an extension, I changed the schedule as I saw fit. Wilhelmina hesitated. You don't need to help me wash up, Wilhelmina says to the maid. Just prepare the food, that's enough. Huh? The maid is surprised. What, you only have to clean while I sleep? And then at dawn, Wilhelmina resented. Just do it whenever. What? The maid is shocked. The oldest of them is only 10 years old at most. Wilhelmina ponders, looking at the children. Are these young children working to earn money? If they were from a noble family or working under a knight, it would be at least somewhat easier. But these children do all the dirty work. And even then, I hear Leighton treats his servants relatively well. How much worse is it elsewhere? Wilhelmina thinks. But I can't just tell them not to work. In this era, to deprive them of work is to deprive them of their place in society. It's not just the bosses giving the orders. The problem is the society that forces children to work. Again, Madame is throwing that sharp look at me again. Huh? Wilhelmina doesn't understand. The boy fixes Wilhelmina's hair. Madame's facial expression is so sharp-tilled, he chuckles. Sharp facial expression. Wilhelmina is surprised. Did I really look scary? Hut. It's okay, it's nothing, Wilhelmina soothes. Did you finish the potatoes? Yes, replies the boy. Would you like some more? Wilhelmina offered. I don't want any tilled, replies the boy. Wilhelmina looks at the boy. Oh, she guesses. Maybe she remembered when I put her on my lap. Do you want to get up? Wilhelmina asks. May I? The boy asks cheerfully. Of course, tilled, smiles Wilhelmina, taking the boy in her arms. Madam, are you going to stay here? Asks the boy hopefully. Yes, I think so, Wilhelmina replies. Phew, that's a relief, the boy exhales. The kids must have thought I was going to leave the annex. Well, with all the rumors going around, that's not surprising. Should I say it's thanks to the emperor? Wilhelmina pondered. Well, I am grateful. What are you doing today? Wilhelmina asks the boy. We are going to the garden to pull weeds, replies the boy. The weeds that have been growing since fall are tough, so we need to put in a lot of effort. That sounds hard, Wilhelmina remarks. But it's good to have someone who knows how to pull them. Johan's really good at it, the boy says. Johann? Wilhelmina is surprised. That's the first time I've heard that name. I thought I had memorized the names of all the servants. Is there a child I haven't met yet? Johann, the bellboy, the boy explains. He only works for a daily wage. The gardener hired him. But even though there's a lot of work in the spring and summer, there isn't any right now, so he's struggling. So we asked him to work with us, but he didn't want to. Why? Wilhelmina wondered. Mumbles. The boy hesitates. He's afraid of the nobles. He thinks they'll pull out a whip and beat him if he makes a mistake. We told him our madam is not like that. But Johann saw his previous master. Messengers don't get much work in winter. In winter, unless the day is like today, when we tear up the winter weeds, they don't get paid at all. Johann doesn't have parents, so I worry about him, the boy shares. When you think about the former duke, it makes sense. Wilhelmina agrees. Johann lives alone, she asks. He lives with his little sister. She's still too young, so Johann has to earn everything on his own. But lately they don't have anything to eat. He said they're surviving on tree bark porridge. Is everyone close to Johann? Wilhelmina inquired. Yes. Johann, the boy confirms. He's strong and smart, so he's helped us a lot, even when it wasn't his responsibility. This boy named Johann seems to be quite popular, Wilhelmina notes. Are you sure Johann is doing a good job? Wilhelmina asks. No, the boy nods. Then maybe I should meet him, Wilhelmina decides. I need my messenger for errands outside anyway. Johann walks down the path, immersed in his thoughts. Nobles can't be trusted, he thinks. Suddenly he steps on someone's feet. Ah, cries out Johann. Sorry, he apologizes. Sorry, I'm sorry, mutters Johann in horror. How dare you soil my shoes with weeds? Growls the nobleman, swinging his cane. Snap! The blow lands on the boy's back. That's why lowly humans are so disgusting, shouts the nobleman. Just because they couldn't pull a single weed, they treat people like animals. Of course, if I were to become a servant, things would be a little better than they are now. But if I end up dying because of this, Lily will be left all alone. No matter how important money is, it's not more important than life. But since I'm still standing, I should be grateful, so I'll do my best. Puck. Johann pulls a weed with force. Johann freezes. This person? Who is she? Perplexed, he sees Wilhelmina. What's that? Johann remarks when he sees Wilhelmina sitting in the garden. It's not even the middle of winter yet, but she's wrapped in a coat instead of a blanket. I need to weed these weeds. Johann concentrates on his work, but of all places, she's sitting right where the weeds are. Judging by her clothes and the fact that there are no servants around, she doesn't seem to be a noblewoman. Johann thinks. Excuse me, I was going to weed the weeds here. Johann addresses Wilhelmina politely. Oh, I see. Wilhelmina replies, looking at him. Am I disturbing you? Sorry about that. Wilhelmina leans closer to him. She doesn't look like a noblewoman, but her presence is unusual. Johann thinks again. Is your name Johann? Wilhelmina asks. I have heard of you from Marine, she continues. I've heard that you are quite skillful at pulling weeds. Wilhelmina inquires. Yes, I suppose you could say that, Johann replies uncertainly. And apparently you're quite clever too. Wilhelmina adds with a smile. She spoke fondly of you, saying that you are a kind older brother. Wilhelmina shares. What is that? Is that a compliment? Johann wondered. Johann flinches in surprise. He feels Wilhelmina approaching him. That man smells nice, Johann remarks to himself. Not the stifling perfume that nobles usually wear. A sweet smell of butter and herbs. I think I'd smelled that odor somewhere before. Johann thinks. Do you like potatoes? Wilhelmina suddenly asks. Johann is surprised by her question. They're not spring potatoes, but they're still delicious, you know. Wilhelmina holds out the potato to him. Johann looks at the potatoes. Yes, that smell. The smell I smelled when my grandmother and mother were still alive. The smell of herbs being cooked. The smell of freshly baked bread. A very familiar and soothing smell. If you find it difficult to brush, I can do it for you. Just tell me, Wilhelmina offered. I also have cinnamon tea. Would you like some? The conversation was actually quite pleasant, Wilhelmina thinks as she watches Johann. He's very cautious, so we didn't get close. Failing to gain favor. My reputation as an academy instructor is in ruins, Wilhelmina laments jokingly, but, can I visit you again? Johann asks uncertainly. Sure, I'll be here every Wednesday morning, Wilhelmina promises. I'll bring some fried potatoes, she adds with a smile. He's smart, Wilhelmina thinks. I know little of the situation outside the castle in Leighton territory. If I could ask Johann to look into it, that would be helpful. As Lady Leighton, I should at least familiarize myself with the affairs of the territory. It's also a good opportunity to offer Johann a decent job. I'm already looking forward to our meeting next week, Wilhelmina thought. Wilhelmina notices a man approaching. What is the head butler of the main estate doing in the annex? She is perplexed. My lady, I hope you have been well, the butler greets her. I have. What brings you here? Wilhelmina asks. I have come on behalf of Madame with a message for you, explains the butler. Helene must be very busy. Yes, please forgive her with her generosity, the butler confirms. So she doesn't want to meet in person over nothing. She's observing formalities as a daughter-in-law, but has no intention of getting close. Wilhelmina realizes. Well, I suppose that's better than nothing. A small banquet is planned for a week from today, the butler informs her. It is a celebration in honor of the Duke's accomplishments. Madame will be unable to attend due to a summons from the imperial court, so you would like me to attend in her place, Wilhelmina finishes for him. Madame recommended it in the hope that you would be introduced to Western social life. At least they're framing it as an opportunity and not just a substitute duty, Wilhelmina thinks with irony. It will be a small gathering, attended only by members of the ducal family, the Duke, and a few close acquaintances. That should help you get used to high society. Very well, I will go, Wilhelmina agrees. She nods, accepting the decision. Not that I have a choice. They call it a recommendation, but refusing will have consequences. At least it's only a role as an extra. Being a mere spectator should be enough. Thank you, the butler says. I will arrange for a stylist and an experienced noblewoman to assist you. An experienced noblewoman? Wilhelmina is surprised. Yes. Since this will be your first time in Western society, you'll need guidance on how things are different from where you come from. So you're basically saying I'm not good enough and I need etiquette lessons for the nobility, Wilhelmina realizes. Well, they're not wrong. Training wouldn't hurt. She agrees to herself. Good. But have them come in the afternoon. May I ask the reason? The butler inquires. Well, obviously, because I'm sleepy in the morning, Wilhelmina replies. I'm tired of studying early in the morning back in Korea. Sick? The wheels of the carriage touch down. So, Wilhelmina looks at the approaching figure. This woman, Baroness Roland, the most famous governess who raised countless noble ladies in the West. It begins, Wilhelmina realizes. My first official duty as lady of the house, she concludes. Viscountess Roland, author of the capital's best-selling Modern Etiquette for Ladies. After her husband's death, rather than inherit the family title, she chose to become an etiquette instructor and has taught countless young ladies. The lessons would last 3 days and the schedule would be challenging. Try again, the Viscountess says sternly, holding out the book to Wilhelmina. Imagine that your spine is moving away from your navel. Keep your back straight. Open your chest and shoulders. Keep your head straight. Your gaze should not wander, chin slightly down. Straighten your back. Place your left hand on the edge of the soup bowl and scoop the soup from the front with a spoon. Avoid making noise. When the level of the soup goes down, you can lift the plate slightly. Wilhelmina tries to follow the Viscountess's instructions at the table. Cut the food into bite-sized pieces. If a toast begins, raise your glass to eye level to the guest of honor and make the toast. Night falls and Wilhelmina, exhausted, collapses on the bed. To become a duchess, she thinks. It is definitely not an easy task. Wilhelmina sighs heavily. I expected it, but still, it's so exhausting, I feel like I'm going to die. But the harsh criticism was noticeably less today. She notes to herself, I'll be perfect tomorrow, that's for sure. Wilhelmina falls asleep. The Grand Madame holds her own with great composure. The Viscountess notes as she sips her tea. Not fretting over minor mistakes is an admirable attitude. It is thanks to your help, Wilhelmina thinks. There are still areas to improve, but since Grand Madame does not need to dance, the festive banquet should go smoothly, the Viscountess said confidently. That's right, I don't have a partner, which suits me just fine, Wilhelmina thought. I need only greet the guests and then spend time at the table. After that, I'll manage somehow. What should be the proper demeanor of a madam towards a young lady who has just made her debut? Questioned the Viscountess. What? Wilhelmina is surprised. Her complexion is pale, but I will explain it to you, says the Viscountess, clearing her throat. Madam, calls out the Viscountess. If it is a lesson to be learned in words, had it not been better to sit down? All right, let's take a break, she agrees. Please take a seat here. Chop, the Viscountess leads Wilhelmina to a chair. Wilhelmina sits down. Here, hold this. The Viscountess holds out a small pouch to her. Madame, what is this? Wilhelmina asks. There is a hot stone inside, explains the Viscountess. If it gets too hot, use a handkerchief to hold it. Why are you doing this? Wilhelmina is perplexed. Your hands are cold, she replies simply. Viscountess, even during class, she rubbed my hands a few times, Wilhelmina remarks to herself. That's typical of people who have cold hands. She could have just taken off her gloves completely. But while her demeanor is strict, she is also strict in matters of etiquette. Thank you, the Viscountess thanked. This is a very unusual hand warmer, the Viscountess comments, looking at the stone in Wilhelmina's hands. The stone was brought by a servant. Wilhelmina smiles. I only wrapped it with cloth. You bought this cloth? The Viscountess asks. No, I made it myself, Wilhelmina replies. For the servants, perhaps, suggests the Viscountess. Yes, it is not a difficult task, Wilhelmina agrees. At the Academy for Elementary School students, I had to do all sorts of tasks, she says. Sewing was one of them. I mended tattered clothes and embroidered names on shoe bags for the facilities. When fall passed, the servants in the laundry complained that their hands hurt from the cold, he said. So I made them one at a time, and there were about 20 of them. You have quite skillful hands, remarks the Viscountess. Doesn't everybody do it sufficiently? Wilhelmina wonders. Yes, embroidery is a part of refinement, but not everyone uses it for servants. It's ginger and dried fruit, she explains. This tea, did Madame choose it? Wilhelmina asks. Yes, confirms the Viscountess. Drink it before it gets cold. Ginger must be quite an expensive medicinal ingredient, but it's good when cold, isn't it? Remarks the Viscountess. Wilhelmina suddenly realizes. The western region is colder than the capital. Even fall can be early winter for you. Judging from the clothes you're wearing, it's not hard to guess how you feel about the weather here. I don't like the cold either, Wilhelmina admits with a smile. The poor circulation and sensitivity to the cold is terrible. I can't truly sympathize with the loss of my husband, but I can at least share the experience of the cold, the Viscountess concludes. Dalkak. The Viscountess sets down her teacup. Madame, she turns to Wilhelmina. As your instructor for the past 3 days, I will now share the results of your training. Viscountess Roland, a noted author of books on etiquette, spent decades teaching young ladies the ins and outs of conducting themselves in high society. How to hold a fan, which hand to lean on the cavalier when walking, which compliments are appropriate, and which should be avoided. These and other subtleties of etiquette the Viscountess was relaying to Wilhelmina. Ah, yes, Wilhelmina nods. Weren't you going to tell me about the results of my training? After spending many years in this field, I have come to realize that true education is more than just words, the Viscountess explains. Ah, I think I know what she means. Wilhelmina mentally responds, remembering the admonition from a past life. Don't hide your headphones under your hair. I'll notice you're listening to something anyway. Your skirt is too short. You won't pass the selection process dressed like that. Wait, come to think of it, my classes seem pretty trivial in comparison, Wilhelmina realized. What I do is bother. The Viscountess continues. What the Viscountess does is more like torment. People say I teach young ladies how to behave, but really I wanted to show them how to be a model of nobility, shares the Viscountess. Growing, the Viscountess places her hand on Wilhelmina's arm to teach them the duties and manners of behavior required of those of high rank. Madam, are you sure you are well enough to be up already? Asks the Viscountess with concern. The Viscountess takes Wilhelmina's hands in her own. In that sense, Grand Duchess Wilhelmina, you lack nothing. You possess a mindset I could never teach. For the past 3 days I have witnessed your kindness. Kindness. Wilhelmina is surprised. Every time I see you being served, the expressions on your maid's faces. When I reprimand you, the anxious glances of the maids peering nervously out of the door, and your unwavering kindness to them. As lady of the house, you possess a most important virtue. Therefore, this concludes your education. When etiquette comes from the heart, it can withstand any hardship. Meanwhile, outside the walls of the manor, only 40 nobles will attend the Margrave's banquet. Considering the Margrave's status, that's shockingly few. The Margrave's western lineage is as noble as the ducal lineage. It's also a knightly house respected by swordsmen. If Legan is the image of a noble elder, then the Margrave is a warrior who forged his name with a single sword. I could not understand why such an event was being held on such a modest scale. Wilhelmina looks in the mirror, trying on a new dress. Officially, they are still in mourning. Officially, so no one really thinks so. It hasn't even been 2 months since the previous duke died. The fact that no one is criticizing it probably means he wasn't particularly well liked. I only wear mourning clothes for myself. In this region, wives sometimes wear mourning for 1 or 2 years. Helene has endured well. She must have gone through hard times, since in 5 wives to a former duke, she at least managed to become a mother-in-law. So this is what it's like to be a model mother-in-law. Wilhelmina thinks. One who does absolutely nothing. Pa. Wilhelmina clenches her fists. The presence of dignitaries is more tiring than doing anything. I saw it in a drama once. So you're trying to teach me a lesson, are you? Grand Madam, the maid addresses. Yes, the banquet is coming up, isn't it? Wilhelmina turns to the maid. Come. In the sumptuous hall, Wilhelmina looks around at those gathered. Ah, that man. That's the Duke. He is younger than I expected. More like the head of an ancient noble family. He's more like a corporate CEO. It's said that the Leighton family separated from the imperial bloodline a long time ago. Just looking at that blonde hair, I can believe it. Come to think of it, is this our first formal meeting? The first formal meeting with my stepson is at someone else's banquet, and accepting a stepmother who's younger than himself, even for someone with a modern mindset like me, that's a hard pill to swallow. He must be uncomfortable with me, right? Wilhelmina thinks. Pa. Duke Leighton approaches her with a smile. Ah, mother. Huh? Wilhelmina is stunned. So we finally met. I am Michael F. Leighton. Somdum. The Duke extends his hand for a handshake. Somdum. Wilhelmina is confused. Wilhelmina, Leighton. Holchak. The Duke shakes her hand enthusiastically. Al Leighton, nice to meet you. What's going on? Wilhelmina is confused. This isn't how a new stepmother is greeted. It's how the head of the class greets the new student. Stunned Wilhelmina. Hello, new student. It's a pleasure to meet you. Have you settled into school yet? As if from a drama, the Duke greets her. Haha. Wilhelmina can't contain her laughter. Haha. Given the circumstances, please forgive me for not being able to give you a proper welcome, the Duke says with a sincere smile. That's all right, I heard you've been very busy, Wilhelmina replies, smiling back. It's been a long time since I felt such overpowering friendliness. In fact, I told my wife that we were supposed to greet you first, but she said you might need some time to settle in. That's why I couldn't come to you. A comment like that, Wilhelmina thought. Wouldn't it have been better to leave it unsaid? It could easily come off as talking behind his wife's back. Did he even realize what Helene meant? It's worth checking the expression on the butler's face at times like this, Wilhelmina thought, searching the butler's eyes. No, he doesn't react in any way either. Wilhelmina is surprised. The butler stands with a nonchalant look. Settle in, my foot. Wilhelmina thinks with irony. That was just a polite way of saying, don't make a fuss. The way the new ducal family treats their stepmother, who is younger than them in status, with such respect, it's obvious how shrewd the cronies will be to forgive that. The emperor's opinion matters, of course, but the head of a family should never undermine his own authority. But still, at least you seem to be in good health, which is a relief, the Duke remarks warmly. Are you comfortable living in the annex? Duke Leighton asks, his voice full of concern. Wilhelmina smiles, but thinks to herself, I shouldn't get attached to this place. It's enough for me, she replies, waving away the troubling thoughts. But I worry that you live so far from your mother's residence, the Duke continues, not relenting. If you need anything, you can always move to the main castle, he offers. No way, Wilhelmina mentally shouts. Shield of the boiling spear of all things hits. She blocks his offer with a polite refusal. No, that won't be necessary. I already hate the thought of sharing a castle with others, but the thought of facing Helene is unbearable. Oh, the Duke was surprised at her refusal. The new mother-in-law lives right above the sons of her family. Ultimatum confrontation between mother-in-law and daughter-in-law. Explosive tension from the start flashes through Wilhelmina's mind, reminiscent of a scene from the drama. This feels like the beginning of some show about divorce mediation, and if that were the case, I'd clearly be the villain. Wilhelmina mentally grabs her head. Ah, in that case instead, the Duke changes tactics. Master, the banquet is ready. The butler intervenes like a lifeline. Well done, butler. Perfect timing. Wilhelmina rejoices. Oh dear, it's about time, the Duke falters. Well, let's get moving, mother. Wilhelmina silently takes his hand. It can't be helped. I must take Helene's place today. I must fulfill my role properly. Countess Cecil of Lake Manor enters, the master of ceremonies announces, and the procession begins. I welcome the Duke of Leighton, the Count pronounces. Welcome, replies the Duke. I hope your journey has been peaceful. It went well, the trip was much easier than last month, the Earl replies. So today, I just have to stand here like a mannequin and repeat memorized phrases dozens of times. No one approaches me directly, but I can feel their gazes. They're assessing my relationship with Michael, wondering if I'll provoke his anger, or perhaps trying to figure out who I really am. Next in line, announces the master of ceremonies. Nobles aren't so different from regular people after all. As soon as this is over, I should have tea and head to the drawing room, Wilhelmina thinks. The Honorable Viscount Millis enters with dignity. And there he is, Viscount Millis, and with him, Alina. At last, the last nobleman, sighs Wilhelmina. Did they really come in a father-daughter pair? She remarks. Huh? Wilhelmina is perplexed. What is this? That child's heels are twice as high as mine. What kind of torture is this to a growing spine? Wilhelmina resents looking at Alina. And a dress that opens her shoulders. What kind of glamour are they trying to impose on the child with that outfit? Just look how pale she is. Can't you walk normally? Growls the Viscount at his daughter. Yes, father, Alina replies faintly. Oh no, this is a disaster, Wilhelmina realizes. I salute the Duke of Leighton, Alina says faintly. Can she even bow with a waist like that? Wilhelmina remarks, looking at Alina's tight corset. It looks bad, she thinks. Hey, Wilhelmina calls out to Alina. Whoop! Alina flinches and turns around. Alina! Her father calls out loudly. Come back. Alina blinks, looking at Wilhelmina. Ha! She flinches startled. This is serious. Wilhelmina thinks, seeing the girl's condition. What have I done? Grand Duchess, whispers the Viscount, clearly displeased with the interference. You threw her into a swoon, thinks Wilhelmina anxiously. Are you feeling better now? She asks Alina. Ah, Alina cries out fearfully. I told you to make pumpkin soup. Wilhelmina turns to the servant. You have to let her drink it, right? Huh? Alina doesn't understand. Dalkak? The servant hurriedly serves the soup. Elisa was offered a refill, but she declined, and Wilhelmina smiled sweetly.
She offered to drink some more soup, but the young lady hesitated, as if in indecision. Duchess Dowager's gaze was full of mild concern as she watched her guest's hesitation. Noticing the embarrassment, the girl timidly called out :D Duchess. Suddenly, Duchess Dowager asked her to stand still, and the next instant, something sharp touched the girl's dress. A startled gasp escaped her chest as the blade slid close to her skin. Duchess Dowager, you mustn't do this, shrieked the girl, not realizing what was happening. Instead of danger, the Duchess deftly undid the tight corset around her guest's waist, freeing her from the restraints. What is she doing? The surprised girl's mind raced. Could the Duchess have a secret hobby that no one knows about? Suddenly finding herself in the arms of the Duchess, the girl was completely confused. Oh, what? The Duchess pointed to the front of her dress. The hook in the front. A scream of horror pierced the silence of the room as the girl realized what was happening. No, my belly can be seen. If it's sticking out in the front, loosen it in the back too, the Duchess calmly remarked as she continued to manipulate the corset. New sighs and moans of despair did not stop the Duchess. No, where? The girl was horrified. I'm not even married yet. To bear my skin like this in such a place, the Duchess, ignoring her panic, threw a warm cloak over the girl's shoulders. Here, put this on. This, what is it? Stammering, the girl asked. No one's coming in. Don't worry. Just finish the rest of your soup. The Duchess smiled, offering a reassuring smile. Didn't it get a lot more comfortable when I loosened my waist? Duchess asked, watching for a reaction. The girl remained silent, listening to how she felt. Definitely it got better. I even had to wear the corset in my sleep, she admitted. Now that I've taken it off, the pain I felt when I breathed is gone. My stomach doesn't hurt anymore, and my back feels flatter. But then, there was doubt in the girl's voice. But I shouldn't loosen the corset. I was told that I should wear it tight until my wedding, so that my waist would stay slim. Loosening it for a moment won't make any difference. Don't worry, assured the Duchess. If I drink this, the girl began, worrying again about her figure. I won't get better. The Duchess finished for her, and the scissors clicked ominously in the air, breaking the tension. So tight, a perfect prism of defense, exclaimed the Duchess, as if chasing away bad thoughts. I want to deny it, but the girl hesitated. It's strange, but somehow I think the Duchess may be right. The fragrant soup beckoned, and the girl couldn't resist. It's delicious, she said with pleasure. The girl's face blossomed with a smile, like a flower blooming in the sunlight. I wasn't planning to give unnecessary advice. Given the time, the Duchess began seriously. But you should go for a larger corset. But this one is the most popular, the girl muttered perplexedly, as if justifying herself. Just because everyone does it doesn't mean it's beautiful, the Duchess said firmly. I'm not trying to argue about beauty standards. I'm just saying that beauty is meaningless if you're not healthy. Do you even know what you look like right now? The Duchess asked, looking at the girl with concern. I look strange. The girl was frightened. I put so much effort into dressing up. What's the problem? The powder on my chest is smudged. The girl exclaimed in horror after noticing the flaw. I'm sorry. I'll fix it right away, she fussed. It's not just that your face is covered with white powder. The Duchess stopped her. Lately, among the younger generation, unnatural, porcelain white skin has become a symbol of beauty. Do you have a stomachache? Suddenly asked the Duchess, looking directly into her eyes. The girl flinched in surprise. It hurts so much, she admitted, lowering her gaze. Wearing that every day must have made you constipated too, right? The Duchess didn't back down, which confused the girl completely. Duchess, she exclaimed, blushing. What? Are you embarrassed? And the fact that you almost threw up in front of everyone at the banquet is not embarrassing. The Duchess was adamant. That was, she mumbled, lowering her head. I understand the desire to be more beautiful than others, the Duchess continued more gently. But that doesn't mean you have to sacrifice your health. My father also said that I need to be slimmer, she said quietly, as if justifying herself. Are you going to marry your father? The Duchess asked ironically. I am marrying my fiancé, exclaimed the girl indignantly. Your fiancé doesn't like thin women? The Duchess asked. He never said anything like that. The girl objected vehemently. Good, at least your fiancé seems to have a head on his shoulders, the Duchess said with a satisfied nod. You should live with your fiancé, not with your father. If he's happy with it, you don't have to go to all that trouble. Tassio's boutique doesn't have any larger sizes, she said sadly. Everyone wears Tassio dresses at the debutante ball, but I was too fat to fit into one back then. And yet, Ayachem, the girl breathed out, ready to cry. At my debutante ball, despite being fat, I dared to eat cake. Someone said something to you, didn't they? The Duchess asked softly, noticing her condition. Yes, the girl confirmed quietly. They called me a country noblewoman, and they said I ate shamelessly at the debutante ball. Since that day, the girl's voice trembled with resentment. The tight corset made me sick. Every night, the high heels made my ankles hurt after a short walk. But I just want to erase the memory of this debutante ball. No matter what it takes, I know how childish it all sounds. The fact that just one gossip made me feel so bad at the banquet. I feel so stupid. Tears flowed from the girl's eyes. It must have been hard for you, the Duchess said sympathetically. Is that why you didn't want to drink the soup? She guessed. Yes, if I eat just because I'm hungry, it looks ugly, she whispered through her tears. It's not ugly, the Duchess said softly. The Duchess poured more soup and said affectionately, it's neither strange nor ugly. Is eating food so ugly? She asked, as if trying to dispel a silly prejudice. But other people, the girl was still hesitant. It's just you and me here now. No one outside can hear what we're talking about. Eating something delicious. Eating healthy food and smiling happily. I don't think there's anything ugly about it. And you shouldn't think you're ugly either. The Duchess's words touched the girl to the core. It's all right, you can eat. It will be our little secret. The girl gratefully accepted the plate and finally allowed herself to savor the taste of the soup. It's delicious, she glowed, as if relieved of a heavy burden. She reflected that she never thought she would become a teacher again, even after being reborn. The Duchess of Dowager was deep in thought about the complexities of adolescent relationships, realizing their poignancy and difference from adults. She remembered how cruel children could be, their anger pure, their hatred gratuitous, their gossip without remorse. The Duchess knew from experience that trying to dig into the wounds of children with emotional scars never worked. In the end, she realized that she was still an adult, and her role was to be on the side of the child, no matter what community they belonged to. Meanwhile, the girl whom the Duchess had recently freed from her corset was dismayed to find that the waist of the dress refused to buckle. The clock in the castle struck midnight. The banquet was soon to be over. The Duchess decided it was time to return to the banquet hall, though she realized she would probably be reprimanded for her delay, especially by her sister-in-law. She handed the girl a small vial. It's honey and some herbs to improve digestion. Try to drink a little of it. The girl gratefully accepted the gift, thank you. Then, plucking up courage, timidly asked the Duchess if she could visit her again, not at the banquet, but just like that. The Duchess wondered if she even had the right to invite guests in her position. She realized that rumors of her friendship with this girl could spread among the nobility and cause unnecessary problems for the child. The Duchess remembered Baroness Holland's advice about the need to make allies. The Baroness was serious, emphasizing that even high society was still a world of people, and thus a battlefield. Okay, we shouldn't think about it so much, the Duchess decided. Okay, she agreed, though she didn't know when, but she was thinking of organizing a regular book club. The girl gasped with delight, then that means you're inviting me to your book club. She was flattered to the core, considering it a great honor to be the first member of the Duchess of Dowager's book club. Is this happening fast? The Duchess marveled as she watched her guests' violent reaction. Thank you. I'm so happy. I'm really happy. The girl was literally glowing with joy. She is about to faint again from excitement. We need to calm down a bit, thought the Duchess. The Duchess said that she didn't go to the banquet, but if the girl told her father that she came here instead, he would understand. The Duchess added that if the girl's father was politically astute, he might even be glad, since that way the Duchess's family would be indebted to them. The girl thanked the Duchess profusely, saying that she had saved her. The Duchess countered that she had simply helped a child who was unwell. Why is she so happy about such a small thing? The Duchess was perplexed, looking at the happy girl. Judging from her concern, the girl's father didn't seem to be such a bad person. But even such a father allowed his daughter to suffer so much that she almost vomited. Family love in this world is truly unpredictable, the Duchess thought as she left the room. The sound of the Duchess's footsteps echoed through the corridors of the castle. She went outside, where a servant was already waiting for her. Hey, you're here. Oh yes, replied the servant. Where is the Duke? Asked the Duchess. Oh, you mean my master, clarified the servant. The servant said that the Duke has gone to the courtyard with the guests, where they continue their socializing over drinks. The second round of drinking takes place in the garden of the ducal manor. The nobles are drinking while looking at the moon. How carefree they must be feeling, thought the Duchess. The border Duke must have already arrived. I should at least greet him. The Duchess headed towards the garden. She noticed someone up ahead. Did I let the servant go too soon? She wondered. I hardly know what the ducal manor looks like. It seems like I'm just wandering aimlessly. The lake. Beautiful, thought the Duchess, admiring the scenery. Just a short walk. If that's the case, then it must be the border Duke. Then I should go to greet him. The Duchess approached the lake. His attire is unusual. The color and patterns of this cloth. Is it a garment from the East? Who could it be? The Duchess wondered, looking at the stranger accompanying the border Duke. One of the men, the border Duke, asked doubtfully if she was sure she didn't want to meet, since she was looking forward to it so much. The other man replied that it wasn't the right time. The Duchess had unwittingly overheard someone else's conversation and was now confused as to what she should do. The border Duke asked when was the right time. Was it still because of that strange book of poems? His interlocutor brushed off the subject of the book. He remarked that the most frightening people seem as harmless as a book of poems. The Duchess noted that the border Duke had even bought a copy of the book, written by someone who seemed to have no idea about love. She wondered if the men were discussing affairs of state, for it seemed unusually sentimental for a conversation between two men. The Duchess realized that she needed to speak to the Margrave, and this unwitting overheard conversation became a problem. The border Duke dropped the phrase that this whole mess had started because he didn't want to act a certain way. Realizing that the conversation was probably personal and important, the Duchess decided to step back so as not to get in the way. But stumbling in the darkness, the Duchess failed to keep her balance and fell. The sound of the fall attracted the attention of the border duke, who turned around at the noise. The duke saw the Duchess and froze in surprise. Ha ha, the Duchess laughed awkwardly, realizing the ridiculousness of the situation. The border duke, as if waking up, introduced himself. I am Count Isonen. The Duchess, embarrassed, introduced herself in response: Wilhelmina Leighton. The Duchess noted to herself that she was indeed Count Isonen, the illustrious Margrave of the West and master of the sword. She felt a special aura emanating from him that she had never felt from anyone before. The Duchess was surprised by the silence of the man in armor standing next to the Count. Who is it? A thought flashed through her mind. The knight, who had spoken confidently before, suddenly froze like a statue. The Duchess even wondered if he was breathing at all. The border duke waved his hand, saying not to worry about it. The Duchess thanked him for his understanding. She asked who was accompanying the knight. He evasively replied that it was an acquaintance of his. The Duchess thought it was strange that the knight didn't want to reveal the identity of his companion. She wondered. The Duchess decided that it was better not to interfere, realizing that excessive curiosity would not lead to anything good. The Duchess mentioned that she'd heard about the evening gathering, adding that although she didn't drink, she planned to join in since she'd been invited. The border duke inquired if she had an aversion to alcohol. The Duchess replied in the negative, explaining that it was her wife's request. The border duke smiled fondly as he remembered his spouse Dotto, my devoted husband. Big and imposing, but weak when it comes to his wife, the Duchess thought as she noticed how the Count's expression softened at the mention of her. The border duke asked if the Duchess would join the gathering in the inner garden. The Duchess replied that she had come to see the Earl to pay her respects, but since she had met him, it was time for her to leave. The border duke remarked that the Duke had sought her out earlier. The Duchess made it clear that she knew where her presence was inappropriate, and that the gathering was obviously intended for a narrow circle of cronies. The border duke, with an understanding nod, agreed. The border duke wished the Duchess a pleasant evening and offered to escort her out, but she declined. The Duchess, in turn, wished the Earl a pleasant evening at the meeting. Then the border duke suddenly turned to the Duchess with a question. He inquired if she had ever had a romantic relationship. The Duchess was stunned by this unexpected question. What the hell ran through her mind? I thought he was a devoted husband. Is he flirting with me? She thought in bewilderment. The Duchess hastily apologized. She hurriedly assured the Count that she had no interest in married men. The border duke didn't seem to understand her words. Pardon. He asked again. No, that's not what I meant. The Count panicked and exclaimed fervently, I love my wife. The Duchess finally realized that there had been a misunderstanding and apologized again. That's it, sorry. My apologies, she muttered with relief. The border duke, having calmed down, remarked that he had heard of her as an unusual person and was now convinced of it personally. What did you just say? I didn't hear the Duchess. Nothing, just talking to myself, the Count replied, then suddenly asked, did you happen to attend the academy? The Duchess confirmed that she had. The border duke then stated that she might not believe it, but someone is waiting to meet her. The Duchess wondered who he was talking about. Count Isonen stated cryptically that someone was waiting for the Duchess, and it sounded like the beginning of a classic story of a fateful meeting. The Duchess noted with slight irony that this was reminiscent of the standard reception of Do You Believe in Fate? She delicately hinted that she wasn't too interested in such romantic endeavors. The border duke seemed embarrassed by her words. Madam, please don't tease me, he asked. The Duchess, realizing that she may have gone too far in her joke, admitted that she had been caught out. She hastened to disappoint the Count by saying that she had never met anyone at the academy. The Duchess explained that she had only had 2 or 3 close friends, and that was the end of her romantic adventures at the academy. After graduation, she immediately plunged into work, being the only commoner, and all of her fellow students returned to their noble families. Thus, any romance during or after her studies was out of the question, and they all lost touch after graduation. The border duke remarked with surprise that this was strange, implying that no one had ever confessed their feelings to her. The Duchess suggested that perhaps he was confusing her with someone else, but the Earl confidently countered that he doubted there was another person like her. The Duchess inwardly tensed, wondering if he was implying that she was strange. The conversation was taking an unexpected turn, and the Duchess felt uncomfortable. The way you talk, it almost sounds like you've been told you love her, the border duke said. The Duchess realized that the conversation was becoming ambiguous and hurriedly interrupted it. She firmly stated that she had never been romantically involved with anyone. Strange, you've never received a declaration of love. That's the border duke stretched out thoughtfully. I think it's strange too, agreed the Duchess, sighing. In fact, I've been quite opinionated. The border duke looked at her puzzled, as if he didn't understand what she was getting at. Excuse me, the Duchess turned to the knight in armor, wanting to change the subject. Yes, the knight responded. Ah, I see, the Duchess finished awkwardly, feeling confused. If I had known that everything would turn out like this, I would have just studied harder, thought the Duchess, realizing the absurdity of the situation. That man in the helmet, she looked at the knight. It feels like he's always staring at me. Am I really so charming? The Duchess pondered in bewilderment. Well, if I were in the knight's shoes, I would probably react the same way, she decided. The mother-in-law is younger than the daughter-in-law. What kind of absurd drama is this? No wonder he's staring like that. The Duchess noticed the servants approaching them. Oh my, what are you two doing there? She heard Anna's worried voice. Grand Duchess, Anna exclaimed, running up to the Duchess. Grand Duchess, you're back, Anna said with relief, almost throwing herself into her arms. You came back alone. It's dangerous, Anna was worried. We are inside the castle. What is there to be afraid of? The Duchess reassured her. And what are you two doing here? Anna, your working day ended a few hours ago, didn't it? The Duchess asked, noticing that Mirani was here as well. We were worried when you were delayed, Grand Duchess, Anna explained. Anna said she was afraid something would happen to you. Mirani, Anna called her reproachfully, clamping her mouth over the boys. When did I ever say that? Mirani muttered indignantly through Anna's fingers. Ah, so they think nobles can look down on me, the Duchess guessed, realizing the cause of their concern. You just blurted it all out, Anna reproached Mirani. It was because you were worried about her, wasn't it? Mirani teased Anna. Such a sweet child, the Duchess smiled. Thank you, Anna. Don't worry, nothing happened, the Duchess reassured the maid. Mirani, were you waiting for her too? Anna asked the boy. Yes, I heard you went out today, Grand Duchess. You look so beautiful today, praised Mirani sincerely. Really? The Duchess was surprised and touched by the compliment. This evening gown was sent from the main estate. It is so beautiful that words cannot describe it. A gorgeous gown that perfectly matches the color of my hair, and the jewels on it, each one is probably worth more than my former salary. Helen really made an effort, the Duchess thought. Even if she probably doesn't approve of me, the fact that she made something suitable for a Grand Duchess shows her pride in the family. This dress is really beautiful, the Duchess remarked once more, admiring the outfit. No, Grand Duchess, you are beautiful, said the child. Me? Surprised the Duchess. Yes, you are more beautiful than the dress. You sparkle like stars in the night sky, said the boy enthusiastically. Oh my goodness, I should give Mirani a small reward for such a compliment, smiled the Duchess. Your body must be freezing. Let's go inside and have some warm milk before we go to bed. Anna, I'm sorry to disturb you, but the Duchess turned to the maid. Yes, I'll make it, Anna answered readily. Then make it 3. You need a drink too, the Duchess suggested. Yes, great Duchess, Anna agreed happily. The banquet hall was magnificent, and the castle next to it was majestic, but still, nothing could compare to the warmth of home. The border duke, left alone, thoughtfully looked after the departing Duchess. Are you nervous? He asked. Yes, admitted the knight. A man who never flinched in the face of hundreds of enemies now. He can barely breathe next to one woman. Why not just take off your helmet and greet her properly? He suggested. That's not how I wanted to meet her, the knight admitted. The Earl grinned. Should one call it stubbornness or excessive loyalty despite his circumstances? Wilhelmina seems to be doing fine. She does not appear jaded by conflicts with her mother-in-law. Rather, she carries herself like a true mistress of the house. I support her as much as I can out of gratitude, but don't overdo it, the Earl warned. You know you can't stay away for long. The border duke was afraid Jake would be disappointed to see him like this. The knight, as if embarrassed by the words, covered his face with his hand, mentioning that he had to sneak around. The duke inquired about his future plans. The knight replied that he had been invited and intended to meet Duke Leighton as he was about to return. The knight clarified that his visit was to congratulate the Earl, not an attempt to get his family into trouble. The Duke greeted his guest warmly, assuring him that Duke Leighton shared his sentiments. The knight announced his departure, declining the offer to escort him out. The Duke regretted not being able to have a drink together, but still let the guest go. I see. Safe travels, the Duke said as he left. The knight, leaving, thought about the need to check the place where the Duchess was staying to report the situation. The Duke was deep in thought. Meanwhile, Wilhelmina and Johann were discussing the Goldrail Company. Johan confirmed that it was the hottest trading company at the moment. Johan explained that Goldrail was a newly founded merchant group with noble status, catering to both commoners and nobility. Johan emphasized that even in the worst-case scenario, money was always needed, and Goldrail was able to provide cash. Wilhelmina agreed with Johan's arguments, but noted the uncertainty of the future and the dubiousness of the idea of getting rich off of science and culture. Wilhelmina, admitting her ignorance of practical science, turned the conversation to gossip about Goldrail. Johan began to talk about a girl selling flour in Goldrail, named Jane. Flour? Wilhelmina asked, interested. Johan confirmed that Jane owned a shop where she sold flour, salt, sugar, and other such goods, suggesting that her name was Jane. Johan noted her uniqueness, mentioning that she is the heiress of the Goldrail family, ambitious and peculiar. Johan talked about Jane's crazy marketing schemes with flour and sugar, emphasizing the expensive nature of the latter product. Johan added that when a man from the office tried to stop Jane's tastings, she fought him back. Johan characterized Jane as stubborn and determined. Wilhelmina, for her part, thought that she was probably a spoiled nouveau rich upstart, but certainly talented. Perfect, Wilhelmina concluded. Wilhelmina thought that she hadn't expected to find the right person so quickly, and the decision to recruit Johan had been the right one. Smart move, she praised, stroking Johan's head. Wilhelmina decided that inventing something from scratch was not an option, so the best solution would be to take the technology of this world and combine it with modern conveniences. Wilhelmina was determined to recruit Jane, no matter what it took. Wilhelmina asked Johan to give the letter to Jane, expressing her desire to communicate with her. Johan inquired if she planned to start a business. Wilhelmina replied that she needed to make some connections first, but she would figure something out. Good luck with that, Johan wished, and Wilhelmina stroked his head again. Johan, surprised by this gesture, froze in confusion. Anyway, I'll go do the garden, Johan said, getting ready to leave. Oh, do you want me to walk you part of the way? Wilhelmina offered. Where are you going? Wilhelmina asked. Johan answered that he had to meet the Duchess. Don't worry, Wilhelmina reassured him, noticing his embarrassment. Wilhelmina thought that if the Duchess was requesting a meeting early in the morning, it must be something important. Wilhelmina guessed that the conversation would be about the incident at the banquet. Wilhelmina assumed that the Duchess was probably unhappy that she had ignored the banquet for the Viscount's daughter and would probably tell her what she thought. Wilhelmina decided it would be better to take the hit so that the rumors about Alina would subside, protecting her from possible repercussions. Wilhelmina reasoned that if the attention shifted to her, the incident with Alina would be forgotten and the girl wouldn't have to suffer for it. Wilhelmina decided that if Helen complained, she would simply apologize. At that moment, Duke Leighton appeared, greeting Wilhelmina. You're here already, he exclaimed, inviting Wilhelmina to sit down. Come on, sit down. Helen, relax. We're not going to quarrel, are we? The Duke addressed his mother. The Duke noticed that the three of them were finally all gathered in the same room. Turning to his mother, the Duke asked what kind of tea she preferred and offered to make it himself. Wilhelmina watched the scene. The Duke, the husband, serves tea to the tea-failed mistress of the house, and Helen cast sizzling glances at her. This man, Wilhelmina thought, coming to the conclusion that the Duke really does live in a fantasy world. Professor, let's face it, when it comes to these damn regression stories, the real threat isn't even the villains. In love fiction web novels, in any genre, the most dangerous characters are the Duke. Turning to Wilhelmina, suggested she have breakfast together, since she was already here and hadn't eaten yet. Damn careless protagonists, Wilhelmina thought in despair. Damn, she exhaled, realizing that of all the people to avoid, she had managed to run into the worst of them all, an impenetrable protagonist. She remembered her first encounter with Mikhail at the party. Despite his ostensible foolishness, deep down she suspected a hidden darkness in him. But the Duke of Leighton, holding out a cup of tea with a smile, seemed the epitome of good-naturedness. Here, have a drink, mother. And yet, despite his ostensible simplicity, the Duke was sincere in his naivety. The Duchess Dowager reservedly observed the scene, realizing that the Duke lacked tact. He was overly optimistic and irritatingly truthful. He didn't seem to understand what it was like to be a spineless husband taking his mother-in-law's side against his own wife. The situation was baffling to the Duchess. I heard you were called, Duchess Dowager said suddenly, breaking the silence. Yes, Wilhelmina replied. I thought it was important for the three families to meet at least once. Not you. Duke Leighton turned to his mother. I spoke to Helen. He explained that they were going to go to a separate house. Enough. Don't provoke Helen any further, Wilhelmina mentally exclaimed, realizing that the Duke was unwittingly adding to the tension. There is no need to go to a separate house, Duchess Dowager firmly stated. Wilhelmina felt other people's eyes on her, realizing that it was time to act. Really? The Duke of Leighton seemed surprised. Really? Wilhelmina repeated to herself. The expression on Duchess Dowager's face softened. If so, it's a sign that we don't need to be formal, Duchess Dowager remarked. If it's not urgent, you can use letters. You both must be busy. How can we dispense with letters when we are all families of high officials? Objected Duke Leighton. How about getting together once a week? A family meeting is necessary at least once. Duchess Dowager couldn't stand it, abruptly interrupting his gesture. This guy. Enough already. Sweetheart, I have something to tell my mother about the banquet. The Duke turned to Wilhelmina. I'd like to speak to her alone. Really? Good. Do I need to step aside? Duke Leighton responded readily. Then please speak quietly, he said as he left the room, leaving the women alone. Duchess Dowager lowered her gaze, starting the conversation. I heard about the lady from Baron Milliget's family. This is it. Wilhelmina mentally prepared herself for criticism. I think I've thought of it before. It was a bit of a fuss. Duchess Dowager began. Yes, that's why you didn't attend the Margrave's feast, Wilhelmina pointed out. I was waiting at the entrance, but since I couldn't properly express my congratulations, I thought it best not to attend. Duchess Dowager was silent for a moment, pondering her words. Then she held out a letter to Wilhelmina. This Wilhelmina noticed that the seal on the letter was not broken. The Baron's daughter sent a letter of thanks. Duchess Dowager explained. That means the contents have not been checked, and I thought you censored such letters, but this is unexpected. It was an excellent reply. The Baron's daughter's party was her first banquet after her debut. If she made a mistake at this feast, it would be a big stain in her life. However, not having the Duchess at the feast was also a failure. But Helen Duke Leighton tried to intervene, but Duchess Dowager stopped him. Michael, wait a moment. Helen hasn't finished speaking yet. So, Duchess Dowager continued, I would like to entrust Mother with the role of hostess at the next feast. The next feast? Wilhelmina asked, surprised at this turn of events. This feast was for the Margrave, and the next feast was for the Margrave's soldiers, including the Knights of the Border. It's so my absence from the Margrave's feast could be perceived as disrespect to the Margrave's army, so this is a chance to make amends. While it's just a cover-up, it's also an attempt to silence the gossip of the community. It's a story that won't give rise to a bad reputation, so it's hard to give up. Yes, I'll prepare. Wilhelmina agreed. Since I've caused trouble, I have to give it a name. The venue and budget are planned, so I'll pass on the schedule. Then perhaps we should have tea, Duke Leighton suggested, again trying to lighten the mood. No more tea, Wilhelmina exclaimed mentally, but said aloud, bring tea here. I have prepared a herbal tea, good for colds. Please drink it before you go, Duchess Dowager suggested. Just sit still, I'll serve you, Duke Leighton said, pouring the tea. Michael, how can she bear a duke with such a character? Thought Wilhelmina, watching him. I hope he will be to your liking, Duke Leighton said, holding out the cup. No matter how gorgeous Helen is, Michael is ultimately the head of the family. Looking at that carefree and optimistic face, Wilhelmina felt that the future of the duchy, which had never been a concern, had now become a worry. No, master. Wilhelmina mentally addressed her mentor. The protagonist in a genre bang is usually omnipotent. Those are the rules. The characteristics of a troubled character are a little different. Yes, if you say so, then that's the way it is, Wilhelmina agreed. Unlike previous representations, Michael is highly valued by the servants. So this lively and cheerful character may have been created out of necessity. There was a knock at the door. Who is there? Come in, allowed the Duke of Leighton. A servant with a letter entered the room. Master, I'm sorry to interrupt your conversation, but there's a letter you need to check. Oh, I'm sorry, but I must return, Duke Leighton said, handing the letter to Wilhelmina. Please enjoy your stay in my house. Helen, I'll go do some work and come back, Duke Leighton said as he left the room. I think we're done with tea, so I'll get up, Wilhelmina said, eager to end the awkward encounter. Mrs. Pauline was very complimentary of Mother, Duchess Dowager remarked. Did she? That's a relief. I have had many awkward moments. Though inexperienced in etiquette, she said her heart is as fine as her manners. Was the ginger tea effective? Wilhelmina wondered. Should I buy some more? That's good, Duchess Dowager replied. I hope you will behave yourself in the future without being arrogant. That's clearly sarcasm, clearly sarcastic. Sounded in the air, but Wilhelmina felt no offense. But that's not so bad, she thought, looking at the Duchess of Dowager. There is no need to hide so carefully. Michael is not here. Helen is old enough now. Does she really want to be angry? Wilhelmina wondered. Somehow just a little. Ha ha. Wilhelmina grinned, realizing that Duchess Dowager, though trying to hide her dislike, was still doing it quite nicely. It's obvious what you're thinking, pretending you don't hate me when you really don't. Wilhelmina reflected that in this world, she might be living in a young body, but she had already studied human nature enough. Before coming here, she had considered herself sophisticated in the matter. Like any modern person without absolute status, she continued mentally. I don't really care if she openly dislikes me. Personally, I even like mothers-in-law like Helen. Yes, your arrogance. Duchess Dowager brought her back to reality. I will strive to be a decent duchess without arrogance. Because conflicts between mother-in-law and daughter-in-law disturb the peace of the house. Does it not? Duchess Dowager added that there are 2 more tasks ahead before the year-end party. The first is to establish contact with Jane, the gold rail merchant. The second is to ensure the success of the Knights and Soldiers party. Wilhelmina admitted that she wasn't sure of the success of either task. But let's focus on what we have in front of us. It is a pleasure to meet you, Duchess Consort. She heard Jane Goldrail's voice. Jane Goldrail introduced herself, making a slight bow. I am Jane Goldrail. It's a pleasure to meet you, Jane. I'm Wilhelmina, the Duchess replied. It's cold in here, so I've prepared some tea for you. I hope you like it, Jane suggested. All right, let's have some, Wilhelmina agreed. Suddenly, there was a loud scream. The boy ran into the room and shrieked in fright. What is it? Who is it? Pretty big, surprised Wilhelmina. I thought it was a wall. The guy apologized for his appearance. I thought our eyes met, Wilhelmina noticed, perplexed. Oh, are you frightened? He's my messenger, Jane explained. I'm sorry, I should have warned you beforehand. It's all right, Wilhelmina assured her. Jane took a sip of tea. Is that quince? Is this your first time drinking it? She asked. It's good for colds. Ah yes, it has a unique flavor, Wilhelmina replied. I found it in the food storage. Ginger is quite expensive, that's why they say it's hard to get it anytime, like Anna said. Jane put the cup on the table. I heard you wanted to make a business arrangement. Goldrail is always willing, Jane assured her. But I'm only a subordinate, so I'm worried I won't be able to cope with the shrewdness of the Duchess Consort. A roundabout way of rejecting me, not wanting to get involved with the nobility and the hassle that entails. Wilhelmina thought. I think you misunderstand something, she objected gently. I didn't call you here to propose a partnership. Then Jane was confused. I want to invest in your business, Wilhelmina said. In this world, as in the old one, starting a business is no different from starting a lottery. I'm not a merchant, but more of an investor. Excuse me, but do you know what I do? Jane asked, puzzled. Yes, you sell grains and seasonings, Wilhelmina confirmed. A grain store is not unprofitable, but unlike stores selling jewelry, fabrics, or gems, its income is stable, not skyrocketing. You can make money steadily, but it's hard to get rich doing it. But Jane tried to overcome this by introducing all sorts of unusual promotional moves, holding tastings to catch the attention of customers, or inviting chefs to create sugar sculptures, selling homemade condiments ahead of their time in marketing strategies. Wilhelmina pointed out that the problem is that it's too ahead of its time. No matter how extravagant the marketing, targeting commoners with limited purchasing power will not yield great results. You sold flour at low prices to Johann and other orphans. Thinking about this kindness, I want to make a small investment. The important thing is that it is an investment, not a sponsorship. It is true that I feel goodwill towards you, but I want to emphasize that our relationship is a business. Jane was silent, mulling over the proposal. I understand, Jane finally said. I will do my best to meet your expectations. Wilhelmina noted to herself that no merchant would refuse an offer when someone financed them without interfering in their business. I don't expect much profit at the start. As long as the core capital isn't affected, that's enough. Jane didn't understand the last one. Well, of course, damaging the capital stock is practically a crime, isn't it? Wilhelmina clarified. What? Jane was puzzled. Is there a law that protects an investor from hostile actions? Wilhelmina hesitated, realizing that, according to her explanation, when a merchant receives an investment from a nobleman, he must take an oath not to harm the principal. If the fixed capital is damaged, not only will they go to prison, but their entire family will be branded for life and forced to labor. Fantasies Tommins Wilhelmina remembered. If the capital stock is damaged, Jane repeated thoughtfully. Wouldn't that make the cash flow too tight? That's why trading houses carry risks that require large investments. They are often considered a gamble of a lifetime. They don't even have their books professionally audited. Wilhelmina wondered. Creative accounting, what's that? Jane didn't understand. It's Wilhelmina began to explain that it refers to manipulating the financial performance of a trading company for profit. The name may be different, but the concept probably exists, right? Jane was confused. This woman, she's not just an ordinary noblewoman, thought Jane, amazed by Wilhelmina's knowledge of business. Wilhelmina, a woman of extraordinary charm, but in the end, just a young noblewoman. Jane admitted to herself that she had originally planned only to play along with the Duchess, accept the investment, and then quietly withdraw, returning only the principal. She's shrewd, Jane thought, realizing Wilhelmina's mental acuity. Creative accounting. Manipulating financial figures for unfair profits. But that's not the only trick. There's also reverse creative accounting, Wilhelmina suddenly announced, revealing new facets of her intellect. Reverse. Jane was perplexed. Do you mean deliberately underreporting? She wondered if it would prevent her from attracting investment. Not necessarily. You just understate them enough to give the appearance of gradual growth, Wilhelmina explained, preparing to give an example. Wilhelmina explained that let's imagine that sugar symbolizes profit, and each layer of sugar corresponds to a year. Both companies show the same total profit over 4 years, 10 layers of sugar per year. Jane, which business would you invest in? Wilhelmina asked, offering a practical application of her knowledge. Jane, without hesitation, answered that, obviously, in one that shows steady growth 1/2/3/4. The second option 2/3/2/3 is too inconsistent and unreliable. Exactly, confirmed Wilhelmina. But what if the actual profit was 2/3/2/3 and the figures 1/2/3/4 just falsified reporting? The astonished Jane could only exhale as she realized the depth of the deception. Anyone who looks into the future invests in gradual growth. That's why they manipulate accounting, Wilhelmina finished, revealing the essence of creative accounting. Of course, they don't just use this simple trick, they combine creative and backward accounting together. So that's how businesses that always seem to be flawless show flawlessness, Jane realized, amazed by the knowledge she had discovered. That's how they trick investors. But if they're exposed, won't they be labeled frauds? Jane asked, realizing the risks. Yes, it's a game where they gamble everything, expecting to win back when they make a big score. And if they have shell companies, they can even keep double books, Wilhelmina explained, revealing all the details of the financial kitchen. Thank you, Jane said gratefully, absorbing the new knowledge. By the way, what exactly is a shell company? Companies that exist only on paper. You've never heard of them. Surprised Wilhelmina. Subsidiaries that pretend to be real, shell companies that look legitimate, but there is nothing behind them. Jane was shocked. I was too naive. She's a real catch. Thank you for the valuable knowledge you shared today. Jane thanked Wilhelmina. Would it be possible for me to come back to learn more? Of course, come back anytime, Wilhelmina replied, satisfied with the outcome of the meeting. I will visit often, Jane promised, realizing what a valuable source of knowledge she had found in the Duchess. In any case, I got more information than I gave, Wilhelmina thought as she looked at Jane. Good. Now it's time to get on with the rest of the schedule, Wilhelmina decided, preparing herself for new tasks. Looks like I'll have to hurry. I hate to go outside in this cold, Wilhelmina thought, realizing the necessity of organizing a banquet that couldn't be controlled from home. But why not? Suddenly shouted. I told you that the horses belong to the owner, so I can't borrow them. Wilhelmina heard the stableman's voice addressing Anna. Anna, what's going on? Wilhelmina asked, approaching the servants. Grand Madam, Anna exclaimed anxiously. I'm sorry, I was just trying to borrow a horse. The stableman bowed, explaining the reason for the refusal. The horses kept in the annex are dear to the late Duke, each one worth an entire estate. If you want to use them, you need to get Master Michael's permission. That's it, Wilhelmina realized. Well, a mother has to ask her son's permission to borrow a horse. What a ridiculous situation. Wilhelmina grinned bitterly. They don't see me as a real great madam, so of course they won't lend me anything. It seems I have no choice but to walk. What? Great madam? Anna became alarmed, catching the Duchess's mood. Anna, looking anxiously at Wilhelmina, timidly suggested then, maybe we can call a carriage from outside. Yes, of course. I'll arrange for the best carriage. Readily picked up the stableman, realizing his gaffe. But great madam, if you ride in something like that, your reputation. Anna worried. I know, It's like a billionaire's wife taking a cab because she doesn't have her own car. Wilhelmina thought, it's no big deal. I'm just going out for a bit. Who's going to see me? She reassured the servants. People are more important than reputation. The stableman, amazed by the Duchess's wisdom, bowed. Still, I don't see why you should keep horses in my annex if I can't use them. I should contact Helen and have the stables removed, Wilhelmina decided. Move the horses to the main stables on the estate, and I will redistribute your duties, Wilhelmina ordered. Appreciating the loyalty of the servants, Wilhelmina decided to show a little kindness to the servants of the annex, realizing that benevolence should not be overstepped. Great madam, then, how about using that horse? The stable boy timidly suggested, pointing to the horse. Whose horse is that? Wilhelmina clarified. Technically, it belongs to the owner, but the stableman hesitated. Great madam, it is the oldest and cheapest horse here, Anna explained, trying to smooth out the awkwardness of the situation. Oh ho, Wilhelmina grinned, realizing the true meaning of what is happening. So, you do not want to offend me by refusing, but also do not hurry to show respect. But if something happens to the other horses, my life will be, Wilhelmina finished mentally. You are right, Wilhelmina agreed. Understanding the stableman's logic, I respect your professionalism. I will make sure that you will be sent to a place where it will not interfere with your work, so don't worry. The stableman, hearing those words, exhaled with relief. Did I say I was going to send you to prison? Relax your face, Wilhelmina said jokingly. Keep your voice down. Wilhelmina asked. Refusing a horse is one thing, but challenging your master's decision is a much more serious offense. Didn't you know that? Wilhelmina shook her head and plunged back into thought. This guy didn't even bother to show his nose at the morning call. Since he works on the outhouse, he wouldn't be scolded even if he slept all day. If he goes back to the main manor, they'll squeeze all the juice out of him. Anna thought sympathetically about the stable boy's fate. Anna, do you think it is too cruel to send him back to the manor? Wilhelmina asked, doubting her decision. Not at all. If anything, it's an incredibly generous decision. Good. Wilhelmina nodded, satisfied, feeling a slight excitement. The warmth I felt when I first put on this coachie remembered. She must have warmed it by the fire before bringing it to me. What a relief, Wilhelmina thought, appreciating the maid's care. Madam, you are the best, sincerely admired Anna. Oh, that's good to hear, Wilhelmina smiled, pleased that she had not disappointed Anna. Noticing a group of shirtless men practicing, the Grand Mistress stopped while her maid blushed in embarrassment, trying to look away. The maid covered her face with her hands in shame, begging her mistress not to look at the obscene sight, but she seemed intrigued. The Grand Mistress suddenly turned her attention to the rough hands of Anna's maid, thinking about making hand cream, seemingly oblivious to the half-naked men. Anna, embarrassed, tried to justify the situation, explaining that it was common for outdoor training. The mistress, grinning, remarked that the view was quite good, finally embarrassing the maid. Reflecting on the knights and soldiers, the mistress concluded that their physiques were quite varied, and that it was not only size but also skill that mattered in battle. The Count suddenly appeared, greeting the Grand Mistress and asking the purpose of her visit. She replied that she wished to discuss the upcoming banquet. The Count, delighted with his guest, immediately ordered everyone to get cleaned up and dressed before returning to discussing the banquet. He inquired as to what kind of banquet the mistress desired, and she expressed the hope that it would be according to the soldiers' preferences. The Count suggested that simple food and drink would suit them better than elaborate entertainment. The mistress pondered, realizing that ordinary balls and plays might not be suitable for such an audience, and she found it difficult to think of something suitable. Suddenly, she realized that she knew a man who would be perfect to help with the organization, though she warned that his manner of speech might be harsh. The Count did not hesitate to promise to bring this man, and soon the stranger appeared. The maid was surprised to see not a servant, but a stranger whom the Count had decided to introduce in person. The man who approached introduced himself as the Knight Nat Salon. The maid, struck by the beauty of the stranger, did not immediately realize that she was a female knight. Nata Salon explained that the commander had sent her ahead on urgent business, apologizing for her hasty appearance. The Grand Mistress, in turn, apologized for the maid's mistake of mistaking her for a man. Knight Nata Salon, not giving it much thought, remarked that it was her fault, as she had not tidied her hair due to her duties. The Grand Mistress motioned for her to sit down. When Knight Nata Salon sat down, she corrected the maid, saying that she was not a man. The surprised mistress asked if this meant that the knight was sexless, to which Nata Salon confirmed that she belonged to the race of fairies. She explained that fairies were a race born from nature itself, genderless and rarely seen in the human world. The mistress, after a bit of thought, concluded that fairies were not so different from humans. She then returned to the topic of the banquet, saying that the Count had recommended Nada Salon as someone who could give an honest review. Nada Salon readily confirmed that she would give an honest review. The lady emphasized that she wanted the banquet to be a success and promised a reward for good ideas. Knight Nat Salon, after some thought, suggested that rather than just a banquet with food and speeches, she suggested an event that would involve the knights and soldiers. She explained that they needed something where they could directly participate and have fun, not just passively watch the performances. Since it was about knights, dancing was ruled out. Nat Salon suggested having a martial arts competition or sparring. The lady agreed that this was a great idea, as the knights had long craved such an opportunity, especially if it was to be a competition with spectators. She added that these are people who are confident in their abilities and want to prove themselves. The idea of a martial arts tournament seemed interesting, but in the mistress' opinion, it lacked a twist in its standard form. It needed something that would capture not only the knights, but also the entire audience, something spectacular and grandiose, so that the event from the ducal house would make a strong impression. However, Nada Salon noticed that she herself would not be able to participate. The lady asked in surprise why, to which the knight replied that the problem was her face. She explained that no one would fight her at full strength for fear of being labeled the victor over the woman, or would find the excuse of her beauty distracting from the battle. The mistress, upon reflection, offered a solution. If the face was a problem, it should be hidden. She suggested a tournament where the identities of the contestants would be hidden, and only skill would determine the winner. She imagined the contestants dressed extravagantly, almost cartoonishly, in masks and costumes like those comic variety acts, noting that it would add an element of humor to the competition. With a smile, she suggested how about a masked martial arts tournament? She asks in astonishment about the masked martial arts tournament. It is confirmed to her that it is a competition where participants, hidden by masks and in elaborate outfits, perform under pseudonyms. She ponders, amazed at such an idea for a tournament. Suddenly, her hand is grabbed firmly, and she lets out a painful scream. She is asked to bear with it, assuring them that they want to demonstrate their skills. A sly smile appears on the face of the conversationalist as she grips the other's hand tightly. Perplexed, the conversation count asks, "What has Nada so excited?" He admits that he has never seen Nadu so enthusiastic. The talking count notes with a smile that the timing of the count's appearance is perfect. She suggests that the count listen to their plan. The count replies that it sounds interesting. He ponders that the masks and costumes might be uncomfortable, but this is a one-time event, after all. The count adds that the tournament won't be as wild as normal training. For safety, our heroine offers to prepare training weapons, first aid kits, and soldiers to organize the venue. Agreeing readily, he orders Nada to gather available people to help. Nada enthusiastically confirms the readiness. Nada leaves, full of excitement and anticipation. The surprised interlocutor remarks that she did not expect such a reaction. The count explains that the idea of a disguised martial arts tournament seemed to him suitable for Nada. He is impressed by the Grand Duchess's insight. She, embarrassed, admits that the idea was inspired by Korean entertainment shows. The Count shares that Nada has always had trouble cooperating with other knights because of his race or intimidating appearance. He hopes this event will change his view of the world a little. She asks if this was really such a serious problem. The Count explains that military organization requires unity, and a strong individuality can break it. He adds that the day of Nada's discharge is approaching, and he will need to find a master to serve. She asks in surprise, do knights get fired? It is explained to her that normal knights take a lifetime oath of loyalty to their lords, but Nada is a different case. Most knights receive their titles directly from their lords, but those who earn their knighthood through military merit become free knights upon dismissal. Free only in words. In reality, they are more like wanderers, as the status of knight only makes sense with a lord. She suggests that Sir Nada find a new master. The Earl confirms his desire to help Nada. She asks how skilled Sir Nada is. The Count replies that in one-on-one combat, he's one of the best. She sinks into thought, remembering that the Border Duke's army is the most powerful force in the West. If someone with her skill level wasn't recognized in such a place, she would feel incredibly disappointed. She decides to schedule the tournament for next weekend. The Count promises to escort her on her way back. She thanks him for his attention to her idea. The Count asks Anna if she could call for a carriage again. The Count asks in surprise, doesn't she have a carriage? She admits that there were none available, so she ordered a carriage from outside. The The Count, suddenly changing in his face, shouts angrily. He scolds Anna not to dare offend the child. She calms Anna, saying that she has done nothing wrong. He promises to prepare the carriage himself. He orders the servant to immediately prepare the carriage for the lady. The servant hurries to fulfill the order. She is surprised to see the carriage. She is amazed to see that the carriage is pulled by 6 horses. She notices that it is a completely colossal military-style carriage. She thinks she doesn't want to ride in it for fear that everyone will think she's going to war. The Count assures her that she could have just asked for a regular carriage, and there's no need to be shy about inviting her to get in. He assures her that the ride will be comfortable. Embarrassed, she gets into the carriage. The Count joins her, saying that he, too, needs to ride that way. She notes his unexpected friendliness. She recalls that before she became Grand Duchess, she would never have been able to even speak to such a man. The Count asks if she remembers what he said last time. She asks again when exactly. The Count clarifies that it was in the garden. The Count asks if she has someone with whom she once shared a romantic connection. She replies in confusion that she does not. The Count apologizes, asking if she could have forgotten. She interjects in bewilderment. The Count earnestly asks her to forget everything he said. She bewilderedly agrees. Inwardly, she thinks that this only makes the situation even more memorable. Her assistant whispers that by in the garden, he probably meant the evening of the celebration. She confirms it. The assistant asks what exactly happened between her and the Count. The Count stares thoughtfully ahead. The assistant insists, asking what happened after all. She replies irritably that nothing happened. The aide does not believe her, wondering at her reaction. She notices the Count walking into the garden. She asks in confusion what is going on. The assistant exclaims that it is Mr. Jackson. She asks who Mr. Jackson is. The assistant explains that he is the stableman, the same one who did not want to give her a horse. The Count, with a sinister look, looks at the carriage. The wheels of the carriage begin to turn. A fair-haired woman appears, who asks perplexed mother-in-law. She greets Helene by saying, "Good afternoon." The Count explains that they were discussing matters related to the celebration, and since she did not have a carriage, he is personally escorting her. Helene thanks him for his kindness, saying that it is natural for a knight. Ellen adds that she couldn't let the lady travel alone. She is surprised, not realizing what is happening. She is confused, wondering if he is mad at her because of this. OP is perplexed as to why. She pondered that her position in the ducal household was precarious, but was willing to accept it. The Count politely said goodbye, promising a new meeting soon. Elena, having seen the Count off, smiled happily, anticipating further events. Meanwhile, behind-the-scenes intrigue was brewing, because, no matter how it was, making enemies in the ducal house was extremely unprofitable. She stared wistfully into the distance, wondering if this would be a problem for the Count. The heroine and Helena stood on the stairs, expecting to be told off for what had happened. However, the look on the butler's face was as if he was facing the scaffold, much to Elena's surprise. Elena gave orders to prepare a new carriage and horse for the upcoming New Year's reception, emphasizing that new carriages should be delivered by the end of the year. Our heroine inquired about the fate of the horses that were in the outbuilding, wondering what would happen to them. Elena explained that those horses belonged to his lordship the Duke, dispelling Elena's fears. Our heroine understood that she would be bought new horses, and the kind that would fit her position, seeing it as an apology in diplomatic style. Our heroine reminded Elena that it was time to go back. Elena stated that the stable boy in charge of the horses had been negligent in his duties, and she intended to punish him. The sight of the frightened stableman spoke for itself, foreshadowing a serious punishment. Elena asked what our heroine thought about it, wanting to know her opinion on the measure of punishment. Our heroine noted the tense atmosphere. Our heroine asked what exactly the stableman's guilt was, wanting to understand why he was going to be punished. Elena explained that the punishment would follow because the stableman had left the horses of the main estate unattended in the outhouse and had not taken care to prepare the horse and carriage when required. Helena added that they themselves admit that the horses in the outhouse do not belong to her, hinting at the real reason for the punishment. Our heroine admitted that she had originally intended to resolve the matter by simply transferring the stableman to another position, but she realized that if she now let him go without punishment, she would lose her authority and status as a mistress. Alina honestly admitted to herself that she had no influence as it was. She reflected that the horses in the outhouse really belonged to the main house, and she generally did not care about them. Our heroine wondered whether it was worth getting into a fight over principles because of such a trifle. Alina, having listened attentively, allowed herself to ask only one question. She asked to whom exactly this stable boy belonged, wanting to clarify his subordination. Helena interrogated what exactly the heroine meant, not understanding where the question was leading. Our heroine suggested that, before deciding on a course of action, she should deal with the matter first. Our heroine explained that if the stable boy was listed among the servants of the outhouse, then the blame for his misbehavior would fall on her, as she had failed to manage the servants. But if he is still a servant of the main house, then the situation changes dramatically. Our heroine went on to say that if this man is a servant of the outhouse, then the horses he was caring for also belong to the outhouse. And if he is listed as being in charge of the main house, then it is the other way around, changing the balance of power and responsibility. She concluded that, of course, Helena would prefer the second option, but once she admitted it, the blame for everything that had happened would fall on her. Our heroine hinted that if Helena was losing both her horses and her authority, then instead of punishing the servant, it would be better to show generosity and win people's favor. Our heroine, frankly speaking, at that moment was worried that a quarrel might start. Anna confirmed that it was the first time she had seen the younger mistress so formidable. Anna noted that our heroine had always given such an impression, but she seemed to look different to the servants. Wilhelmina reflected that the confrontation with Helena had suddenly ended too easily. Wilhelmina recognized that it had been her mistake and decided that Jackson would receive only a formal punishment. She did take the horses, however, and didn't miss out on her gain. Anna reported that Mr. Jackson was said to have gotten a good deal from the other grooms. Wilhelmina wondered what had happened and why he'd been beaten. Anna explained that they said that he was already doing a bad job and he had been slacking, so the other stable boys had decided to teach him a lesson for his insolence. Anna added that she didn't expect it to get to this point. The heroine was greeted by a servant, the same one who had come for a visit. She greeted the OP in return, hoping she was okay. She noticed that they had brought a bunch of stuff with them, hinting at the thoroughness of the visit. Wilhelmina, apologizing, said she couldn't offer tea in the garden, expressing regret. She assured her it was fine, and they had arrived on duty, dispelling the awkwardness of the situation. Wilhelmina realized that the Marquis had sent Nada on a special errand. Wilhelmina noted that it was all too obvious and that this order was unintentional, suspecting the Marquis' ulterior motives. Wilhelmina thought that the Marquis was trying to hide his intentions, but his face showed complete excitement. Nada turned to Helena and asked what she should do, awaiting her instructions. Wilhelmina suggested going to look at the clothes, shifting her attention to another activity. Wilhelmina led Nada to the room where the clothes were stored, heading towards the target. Wilhelmina inquired about their progress, wanting to know the progress of the work. The servants greeted the mistress cheerfully, showing off their accomplishments. Nada asked in surprise if they were Helena's servants, seeing the children busy at work. Wilhelmina explained that they were children living on their estate, helping with the costumes. Nada clarified whether the children were making costumes for the event, eager to get the gist of what was going on. Wilhelmina confirmed that yes, she had commissioned them, explaining that it was a charity event. Wilhelmina explained that the children, after spending a week in the warm room, would be paid for their labor equal to what they could earn for a week of work in the fields, and they could take the leftover fabric with them. Nat asked if the children would be able to do their work well, doubting their skills. Wilhelmina answered honestly that quality didn't matter, emphasizing the charitable purpose of the event. Wilhelmina added that even if the costumes looked ridiculous, there was a beauty in that, too. Wilhelmina emphasized that besides, it's a charity, and who would judge such a thing? Wilhelmina assured that even if it affects the knight's reputation, it will be positive because it's a good cause. Wilhelmina reassured Nathia by saying that, of course, the final finishing would be done by a tailor, so there was no need to worry about quality. Wilhelmina suggested that Nada sit down with the children and help them as well, encouraging him to join the charity initiative. Wilhelmina asked Nate's sister if he would sew something too, involving him in the process. One of the children boasted that he had already sewn a potato knight helmet, showing off his creation. Wilhelmina, after asking if the child liked potatoes, praised his idea. Wilhelmina joked that the child would then be a very popular knight and everyone would want to eat him, bringing a playful note to the conversation. Wilhelmina asked Nada if he happened to know how to sew, encouraging him to participate. Nada admitted that this would be his first time doing it, honestly admitting his lack of experience. Wilhelmina gave simple instructions to gather the pieces of fabric and join them as they came together, simplifying the task for the newcomer. Nada asked how to put them together, needing more specific instructions. Wilhelmina replied that it didn't matter, just sew them together, giving her free rein and encouraging improvisation. Wilhelmina showed the colorful fabric and asked how bright and colorful it was, demonstrating the result of the collaborative creation. Wilhelmina emphasized that any way you can put the fabrics together, encouraging creativity. One of the children asked who the beautiful girl was, mistaking Natu for a girl because of his appearance. Wilhelmina corrected the child, saying it was not just a girl or guy, but a cool knight, emphasizing his status. Wilhelmina explained to the children that the one who would fight in these robes they made was a knight, tying their work to an important figure. The children excitedly shouted, "Wow, a knight! And there's a knight," expressing their admiration. The child remarked that when they met, the knight didn't say that, remarking on Nada's modesty. The child added that as soon as he met the knight, he immediately complimented him, appreciating Nada's looks. The children asked if knights could ride horses and save princesses, asking typical children's questions about knights. Nat, embarrassed, replied that she could ride horses but didn't rescue princesses, correcting the child's idea of chivalry. A child asked if all knights are beautiful like Nat, emphasizing his attractiveness. Another child recalled her father's words about knights being ugly people, bringing contrast to the image of a knight. Nat, smiling embarrassedly, suggested that the children ask questions one at a time, feeling a little awkward with all this attention. Nada thought that the Duchess took such good care of the children, being touched by her kindness. Nada admitted that it was truly amazing, expressing her sincere admiration for her. Wilhelmina modestly replied that she wasn't that good, downplaying her merits. Wilhelmina said that it was no surprise, and Nada just had an overly positive impression of her. Wilhelmina admitted that she hadn't really done anything special by staying humble. Wilhelmina ironically noted that all she had done was give the kids some money and put them to work, but she had earned the money herself, so there was nothing to praise her for. Wilhelmina noted that a beautiful person, even with just a smile, lit up everything around them, shifting her attention back to Nada. Nada, seeing Helena's smile, realized what she really was, a duchess, pondering her true character. Wilhelmina wondered with a question in her gaze what she was like, waiting for Nada to answer. Nada, with an embarrassed smile, replied that she was what she was, evasively but positively characterizing Helena. Wilhelmina interjected what that meant, not fully understanding the words. Wilhelmina suggested going downstairs and going to eat together, changing the topic of conversation and inviting Nada to the meal. Downstairs, a soldier, addressing Commander Derek, expressed bewilderment as to why he had been summoned with Sir Nada. Derek looked at the soldiers in surprise and asked what everyone was making such a fuss about, not understanding the reason for their excitement. Wilhelmina thought this was a good time to talk. The soldier, turning to Derek, asked honestly if he knew that Sir Nat despised them expressing their insecurities and fears. The soldier went on to say that having been a squire for 5 years now, he looks up to Sir Nada, who became a knight in only 3 years due to his looks, comparing their paths and accomplishments. Derek abruptly cut the soldiers short, stating that everything they were saying now was nothing more than their complexes, cutting off further complaints. He exclaimed indignantly, "Complexes, we are offended," expressing his displeasure at this assessment of their feelings. He added that even though these were voluntary sparring sessions, he, after becoming a knight, hardly showed up for training, pointing out the lapses in Nada's training. He asked if they had any idea what it was like to yield to someone whose skills were questionable, expressing resentment and hurt ego. The soldier excused himself, saying he'd been practicing just at dawn, explaining his absence from general training. Wilhelmina thought that was why he practiced secretly, so as not to disturb those around him, showing his concern for those around him. Derek, after listening to the soldiers, said that, well, regarding Sir Nada's skill, their displeasure could be understood, recognizing their right to be displeased. Derek, however, added that everyone had their strengths, shifting the focus to Nada's positive qualities. Derek summarized that the jobs that required strength were theirs and Nada's to accompany the Duchess, emphasizing that it was simply a reasonable division of duties. Suddenly, as if out of nowhere, Nada was counted among the weaker sex. Cunning intrigue led to the conclusion that Sir Nada was incompetent, as if her dignity meant nothing. All she had to do was accept her fate, but there was a falseness in her voice, for they had worked well together, hadn't they? She was the type to skillfully manipulate a situation, to turn it in her favor by exploiting the weaknesses of others. The lady declared that she would have a drink on him after all this, ordering him to calm down and not interfere with her plans. She rushed on, saying that dinner at the ducal house would surely be delightful, as if forgetting her recent humiliation. If the commander said so, it seemed pointless to argue. Obedience was his lot. With a commanding tone, she ordered her head to be raised. Not an inner voice whispered that when she was hurt, she just makes a cold face, hiding her true feelings. The lady's gaze was full of confidence. She insisted on his obligatory victory in the tournament, as if that would solve all problems. The only way to deal with the unfair accusations was to prove his strength. There was no other way. In this tournament, no one knows who his opponent is, but all that matters to him is a victory to wash away the shame. The trembling in her hand gave away her inner tension, doubt tormenting her. If he wins, will his position change then? A timid question, full of hope, resounded in her head. It was unlikely that things would change as easily as by magic, but no one would be able to deny his result. All the effort she had put in was not to betray her. Victory was to be his reward. So, with her head held high, she should be able to raise her sword as well and fight. If anyone would judge it not by skill, let them see what their blade could do. If she is a knight, she must prove it with her sword, not with words, but with action. If she has indeed practiced enough, the protagonist of this tournament will be her, Sir Nada. In response to these words, she only exhaled briefly, expressing her readiness for the upcoming challenge. Do you remember the order of the ceremony, Count? The question was asked, bringing them up to speed. Of course, answered the Count, confirming his readiness for the upcoming events. After the congratulatory speech, the awarding of orders, and then the tournament, everything went according to plan. Right, so the lady smiled enigmatically, hinting at something special. Count, you'll need to wear this with me. She held out to him something red, causing him to look puzzled. A dress uniform. Do I have to wear it too? The Count raised an eyebrow in surprise, not understanding the joke. Of course, it will create the right atmosphere. I'll wear it too, assured the lady, hiding her smile behind the mask. Everyone will recognize the Count, but I would prefer to hide my face, she explained her plan, playing with the mask. I'll have to report after all, the lady said, preparing for the role of commentator. Reporting, you say? The Earl interrogated, not fully understanding her enthusiasm. This is a martial arts tournament, right? Without good commentary, the audience won't be as interested. She convinced him that she was right. Hamon's second thought, you're right. The Count recognized her logic, beginning to understand the idea. What do you think of Nada? Asked the lady, shifting the conversation to another topic. What is it? She didn't understand. You know what I mean, he insisted, playing riddles. He does have an unusual aura. The Count finally realized who he was talking about. His gaze read shrewdness like a commander's. He continued, assessing Nat. Frankly speaking, he's a bit weak, the lady admitted honestly, not hiding her opinion. I understand that Sir Nat has a difficult situation. The Earl agreed, seeing the knight's difficulties. And the more you, Count, single him out, the worse the situation becomes. She explained the consequences of excessive attention. Despite this, Sir Nada has handled everything extremely ineptly. She gave a harsh verdict on his actions. Putting on her mask, she continued to analyze the situation, as if hiding her emotions. Had he realized you were on his side, he would have been able to act more decisively. She hinted at the need for support. A rather cold assessment, the Earl remarked, feeling a little uncomfortable with her directness. The reason for Sir Nada's defeat is that she naively believed that swordsmanship alone would solve everything. The lady explained her mistake. If she knew how to win allies or took advantage of her social status, it would have been much easier to solve this problem. She pointed out other ways of solution. But using internal conflict to your advantage is unworthy of a knight, the Count objected, defending the principles of honor. But bullying by others is a chivalrous act. The lady parried, questioning the generally accepted norms. Isn't it absurd to require a victim to follow a code of honor when even the aggressors don't follow it? She asked rhetorically. There are things in the world that cannot be solved by justice alone. The lady stated the harsh reality. Nada had a lot of resources she could use. Connections, look, she listed the possibilities. If she had been a little more cunning, he wouldn't have had to seek outside help. She emphasized the cost of her forthrightness. Inhaling the scent of the flower, the lady seemed to be distracted from her heavy thoughts, but there was thoughtfulness in her eyes. You told her so, the Earl inquired, knowing her directness. I just can't say something cruel to someone like her, the lady admitted, showing an unexpected softness. There's a lack of determination. In the end, you chose the most troublesome way, stated the Count, realizing the complexity of the situation. It makes me angry when people are not rewarded for their efforts. The lady expressed her main disappointment. For their efforts, she repeated bitterly, looking nowhere. Now I understand a little bit of what you are like, lady. The Count finally realized the depth of her worries. Is that a local proverb? She asked. Sir Natha said something like that last time too, she noted. It makes me angry when people don't get rewarded for their efforts. The lady heard that phrase. I will, the lady said quietly, looking away. I will definitely win, she said confidently, full of determination. Oh, it's Nada, exclaimed one of the knights, recognizing the familiar figure. There are too many contestants, so it won't be easy to win. The knight skeptically assessed the odds. That's how it is, Nada sighed sadly, realizing the justice of her words. I could put up with being hated by squires who hadn't fought alongside me. Her thoughts were full of bitterness. But don't get too worked up about it. After all, it's only a tournament. One of the knights tried to encourage her. Even if you win, who cares? Doubt was in his voice. But you, Derek, you and the other knights of our order, you saw my technique yourself. Nat tried to get through to their minds. Not only did you distort the truth about me, but you also mocked the tournament organized by the mistress, allowing yourself a disdainful tone. Resentment and bitterness sounded in her words. Is this an excuse for defeat? It's disgusting to the point where I can barely stand it. Natha could barely contain her anger. If you're not going to fight at full strength because it's just a tournament, then it sounds like a lie to justify your defeat. Nada accused Derek of cowardice. After the defeat, will you say you just weren't serious? She continued to press, not giving him a chance to justify himself. Why are you so angry? Derek tried to joke away, not realizing the seriousness of the situation. I just wanted to cheer you up, so you wouldn't be nervous. Derek pretended to be friendly, but there was contempt in his eyes. Really? Nada didn't believe a word of it. Then, Sir Derek, I hope you won't be nervous either and show what you can do. Nada accepted the challenge, determined. The smirk spoke of self-confidence and contempt for her opponent. Do you remember the rule about unmasking when defeated? Derek reminded her of the consequences of losing. Even if you don't give your best, it's too pathetic to lose. Wouldn't that be a shame? Derek pressed Nat's ego. Nat nodded silently, accepting the challenge and realizing the gravity of the situation. Well, I'm off. When Mistress gave it to me, I didn't understand why. Nada remembered the gift that now seemed to be the key to his destiny. But now I understand. The realization came like a flash of light in the darkness. It's a gift. If you have confidence in yourself, use it. I remembered the words of Mistress, full of faith. If you want to win, her voice echoed in my head, reminding me of my goal. Do it flawlessly and in the spirit of the tournament, she finished, setting the bar high. Welcome to the martial arts tournament of the House of Leighton, Invincible Warriors. The voice of the hostess echoed through the hall, announcing the start. I am your host and commentator, Cat Bunny. The host introduced herself, causing the audience to laugh and gasp in amazement. In honor of the winners, we begin the charity tournament. A solemn announcement sounded, setting the tone for the event. And now, before the tournament officially begins, the hostess intrigued the audience, anticipating the start of the spectacle. Let us give a loud round of applause to Count Tayton Isonen, who has been a great help in the preparation of this event. The host paid tribute to the organizer, eliciting a round of applause. After all, I was a teacher in a former life, so it's not that hard. The host joked, alluding to her experience. Wait, no, you can't salute. I could be recognized. As everyone already knows, the tournament is on an elimination system. The winner of each bout advances to the next round. The hostess explained the rules of the tournament. And finally, the hostess prepared one more surprise. Special prizes await both the winner of the tournament and the spectator who guesses the most participants. She announced the valuable prizes. Nothing will stimulate interest like good prizes. The presenter emphasized the importance of prizes for the audience. The winner will receive a special sword made by the smiths of the House of Leighton. The host announced the main prize for the champion. and the spectator who correctly guessed the most participants will receive snow-white stirrups, which are given only to the greatest horses. The presenter revealed the value of the prize for the discerning spectators. I got the sword from Helena, and the stirrups they were left behind when the horse was taken away. The presenter recalled the history of the prizes. However, if everyone likes it so much, it's for the best. The presenter got excited, seeing the positive reaction of the audience. So, I announced the beginning of the first masked martial arts tournament. The hostess solemnly announced the opening of the tournament. Sir Slimy Slug and Sir Flavorful Pig's Feet are invited to the arena. The hostess introduced the first contestants, eliciting laughter and cheers. You are graciously requested to come forward. The hostess invited the fighters into the arena. Oh, Sir Blue Bear loses his balance. He's accidentally rolling on the ground. The announcer commented on the fight, making it even more exciting. We all know it's you, Sir Billy. Come on down. The announcer declassified one of the contestants, causing the audience to laugh. With a physique like that, hoping to hide is too naive. The host ironically commented on the failed attempt to hide her identity. Count, what are your predictions for this fight? The host turned to the Count for his expert opinion. It must be recognized that Sir Blue Bear has excellent physical strength, but his movements are still too slow. The Count gave an objective assessment, emphasizing the fighter's strengths and weaknesses. Oh, you're good at this. The host complimented the Earl on his insight. Congratulations, Sir Billy, you've just won. The announcer announced the winner of the first fight, prompting a round of applause. I didn't expect everyone to like IT so much. The host admitted her surprise at the success of the tournament. If there were 2 magnet sound amplifiers, it would be even better. The presenter thought about improving the quality of the broadcast. And now we come to the last fight of this round. After this round, we will have 8 finalists who will continue to fight in the 1/4 finals. The host announces the end of the first round of the tournament. And now to meet the fighters of the final duel. The host intrigued the audience, preparing for the climax of the round. Sir Duck of the Marshlands. Oh, what is that? Showing off his muscles. Oh, you can't even see them because of his clothes. The announcer introduces one of the fighters, making fun of his costume. And now, the next contestant. Here IT is, the long-awaited moment. As the announcer introduced the second contestant, Sir Fay in the pie costume, the host announced the name of the second contestant, causing shock and surprise. Nada. The hall froze in anticipation, recognizing the familiar name beneath the mask. To be honest, I was hoping that he would choose something more comfortable, but I couldn't imagine that they would make him such an outfit. The host commented on the unexpected choice of costume. It's heavy, without the slightest hint of ventilation, and yet he chose it for one reason only. The anchorwoman thought about the motives behind the choice. Because the children made it for me. Nada explained his choice, touching the audience. If he says that, I cannot repeat him. The presenter admitted that she was touched by Nada's action. Nada, you are too serious, the presenter joked, trying to lighten the mood. But this costume, she couldn't hide her surprise as she looked at the unusual outfit. Kadohasa. And who is this? The host turned her attention to another contestant, Sir Helton, but he's already been out. The host was confused, not understanding what was going on. Nada's name didn't come up in the night's assumptions, because no one could imagine that she was already out long ago or that she had agreed to enter the arena with such restrictions. The presenter revealed the intrigue, explaining the audience's surprise. Show them everything you've learned, Nada. The host encouraged Nada, urging him to win. But even so, is he really going to fight with the toy weapons the kids gave her? The host couldn't believe the choice of weapon. You're obviously overconfident. You think you can defeat me with this childish fake weapon, sir? Duck mocked Nat's weapon, underestimating her. What the hell is that? Who's hiding in there? This isn't a duel anymore. It's a cooking exam. The spectators were puzzled, not knowing what was going on. Ordinary soldiers laughed, but the knights, they immediately realized that this accidental blow was not simple luck. The host noted the difference in the perception of the fight. Well, it's time to add speed. The announcer called for more action from the fighters. Can the Duck Knight resist the provocation of the fairy pie? As the announcer built up the suspense, as she described the course of the fight, you're in for a rare treat. The unrivaled battle begins right now. As the announcer announced the beginning of the decisive phase of the battle, The winner of this bout is the incredible Fairy Baker, who continues his winning streak. The host announced Nat as the winner, much to everyone's surprise. How does one win the audience's appreciation during a duel? The knights already know how strong Nat is, but stereotypes can't be broken by just dueling. That's why you need a colorful show like this. The presenter explained Nata's strategy to win over the audience. An exciting fight, a movement towards the defeated opponent, and, on top of all this, a rapture in front of the winner's skill. In the hearts of the audience, the question begins to dawn. Who is this mysterious fighter? The presenter described the effect that Nata had on the audience. They will wait for his next fight, and then, at some point, they will catch themselves thinking that they are sincerely rooting for the unknown masked fighter. Fairy Baker, let's go. Who is he? Never heard of him before. The host emphasized Nat's growing popularity. In 3 fights, Nat turned a dull fight into a real show. The announcer stated the fact that Nat had changed the perception of the tournament. Ouch, Chicken Thigh Sartan loses his sword. Is that a mistake? The host commented on the next fight, full of surprises. Its excessive straightforwardness might seem tedious. This is also my first time fighting such a fight. You may not be used to IT, but why not pick up your sword and continue? The host was addressing the fighter, urging him not to give up. But thanks to his impeccable knightly manner of fighting, he managed the pace of the battle perfectly. The host noted the skill of one of the contestants. No, I can't admit IT. I haven't shown everything I'm capable of yet, was the cry of a fighter refusing to admit defeat. Okay, let's fight again. Nata accepted the challenge, ready to continue the fight. IT was a worthy fight. His confidence in his abilities was a powerful motivation not only for the common soldiers, but also for the knights. The presenter noted Nat's impact on those around him. But a perfect show needs one more detail: a sign that both fighters gave their best. After all, even the role of the loser is important. The presenter reflected on the end of the fight, realizing the importance of drama. This is the moment. I think the black horse is using magic. The host noticed something unusual in the actions of one of the fighters. Okay, the long-awaited final battle is about to begin. The announcer has announced the start of the final bout. The final bout will be fought. Sir Black Horse, who leaves no chance to his opponents, and Sir Fei, who has won the hearts of the audience. The hostess introduces the finalists, building intrigue. Who will win? Now the host brought it to a climax, waiting for the decisive moment. Since this is the finale, why don't we take off our masks? Sir Black Khan has suggested that we reveal our identities before the decisive battle. I think my identity has already been revealed, only Sir Fei remains. Is there any point in hiding any longer? Sir Black Khan hinted that his identity was already known. Sir Black Khan insisted on a fair fight, suggesting that the masks be removed. I wonder who is hiding under the mask of Fairy. The audience held its breath, waiting for the identity of the mysterious fighter to be revealed. Take off the masks before the fight. Sound good. The presenter thought about the proposal, assessing the effect. No, many knights still don't recognize Natu as an equal. This scoundrel took advantage of that to keep his escape route even if he lost. He's so clever, the presenter explained Nat's true motives behind the mask. I'm sorry, but I can't fulfill your request. Nat refused to take off the mask, emphasizing his position. This costume was handmade by a little lady. Her name is Turina, and she lives in the South Earth in the Bake family house. Nat explained that the costume had a special meaning. Her dream was to have a pie, but life was too hard, and her table was always nothing but crusty bread and potatoes. Nata told a touching story about a girl who dreamed of having a pie. Someday I want to eat a big pie too. The girl's words, full of a child's dream, came to mind. This fairy PIE costume was made for her dream, and I cannot take it off. Nata emphasized that the costume was a symbol of the little girl's hope. That's right. I heard that this costume was made by children from the slums. The presenter confirmed the story of the costume, touched by the story. And anyway, it's a charity tournament. Nata recalled the charitable nature of the event, emphasizing its importance. I promised that little lady that she would win. Why Nata promised the girl to win, feeling responsible? A tasty cake is the strongest weapon in the world. Nata ended her speech with an unexpected statement, eliciting smiles and amazement. She always speaks so well, the count asked the host in surprise, amazed by Nat's speech. No, she's usually quite silent. I guess the fairy magic is doing its thing, the host joked, hinting at the influence of the costume. Nata was able to get away with IT then. We need to keep our opponent from getting caught up in something else. The host realized that Nata had turned the tide and needed to move on. And now, before our battle fervor dies down, let's start the final battle. The host announced the start of the decisive battle. Nada this time, she put her feelings into the fight. In past weeks, she has honored opponents, but now she is full of decision to not make any mistake. The host noted the change in Nada's fighting style, her concentration and determination. What? Derek suddenly accelerated. He was clearly losing before. Has he been hiding his true strength all this time? But he doesn't look that talented. Derek is using magic. The host was surprised to notice the sudden change in Derek's tactics and suspected foul play. Magic? You mean his sword is faster because of IT? That's right. The rules don't allow magic in training sword fights, but Derek uses IT so subtly that it's hard to catch him doing IT. That's a violation of the rules. The host confirmed her suspicions and took umbrage at the rules violation, but it's not explicitly forbidden in the tournament rules, so it's hard to call IT a violation in principle. Nada could use magic too, but the problem is that Fae have too much mana. Hiding IT like Derek does would be much harder for him. If he uses magic explicitly, it's more likely to make him look like an unscrupulous fighter than to level the playing field. The host explained the intricacies of the rules and the possible consequences of using magic. I didn't even know there were such loopholes in this world. The rules of the tournament are the same as in a normal martial arts competition. A loss is scored only if you step outside the arena or surrender. The host expressed her surprise at the loopholes in the rules and reminded of the conditions of defeat. Can Nada win? The host wondered if Nada could defeat a dishonest opponent. IT seems the black magician is using magic really. So I'm not the only one who noticed IT. The audience started to notice the magic, convinced of Derek's dishonesty. But why use magic in a tournament? The black mage is definitely Sir Derek. Is he really that dishonest? People started to notice Derek's magic, but he still continues to use it. The host and the audience were puzzled to see Derek's dishonorable act. He cares more about defeating Nath than saving face in front of the other knights, because he realizes that they are not equal. But if this continues, Nada will lose what to do. The anchor understood Derek's motives and was worried about Nada's fate. Nada's weapon is broken. The anchor woman was horrified to find that Nat's weapon had broken. What's wrong? Why did he throw away the sword? He's giving up. Viewers were perplexed as they watched Nat get rid of the broken weapon. Nada, is she really going to fight with her bare hands? The Pie Fairy has chosen a fist fight. Nada, come to your senses. The host watched Nada's actions in shock, urging her to come to her senses. How is that possible? Even with a practiced sword, he can be wounded. He can't be defeated with his bare hands. The spectators were panicked, realizing the danger of the situation. You're not planning to surrender, are you? Sir Black Khan smirked, confident of his victory. What, she fended off the sword with her hand. A fairy pie. That's incredible. The host shouted in excitement when she saw Nat's incredible move. I didn't think she would actually fight with her bare hands, Ugyu. Sir Black Khan was furious to realize that he had been underestimated. Nada never ceases to amaze. Her hand-to-hand combat skills aren't as good, but even so, IT made watching them fight even more interesting. We should organize a fist fight next time. The presenter admired Nada for planning new tournament formats. Got IT. Sir Black Khan triumphed as if he had trapped Nat. There was another dagger. What is IT? The point is not aimed at me. Where is he aiming, madam? The presenter was horrified to see that Nat's dagger was not aimed at the enemy, but at her. Madam, are you okay? Nada, this is a real wing well. There you went out of the arena. Sir Black Khan declared Nat's defeat as he saw the wings and exit the arena. It's a great pity, Pie Fairy, but the victory is mine. Sir Black Khan declared himself the winner, not hiding his gloating. He pushed her out of the arena on purpose. The announcer realized that Derek had deliberately pushed Nat out of the arena, using an unfair trick. What a rascal. The host spoke angrily about Derek's action, not hiding her indignation. More to come.